Welcome to the Wednesday, January 24th, 2024 business meeting of the Richmond School Board of Trustees. If you would please join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we please have the reading of our mission and vision statement.
Mission statement: Richmond Community Schools guide students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Richmond Community School is a collaborative community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is celebrations. Correct?
President Ward and trustee, we'll ask that Mrs. Bridget Hazelbaker, our Communications and Marketing Coordinator, approach the podium to introduce tonight's honorees. Mrs. Hazelbaker, welcome back, ma'am.
Good evening. As you can see, we have quite a group of esteemed students here with us today. These are students from Richmond High School from the Business Professionals of America group. And I'm going to ask them all to come up. And they're also going to introduce themselves and say what grade they're in. I'm not going to be like the spelling bee last night and make them spell their names. But I'm going to go ahead and have you guys come on up. So we have Chloe Chang is here. Ethan Couch, Lucy Couch, Lauren Freeman, Joanna Galloway, Mason Piney, Jesus Hernandez Rojas, Xander Mishra, Carson Knight, Fred Mendenhall, Pushkar Mishra, Libra. I get it wrong every time. I'm so sorry. We just saw him at Martin Luther King breakfast. He was amazing. Cooper Smith, Hannah Stearley, Luke and Oop. Avery Van Martin. So, who would you like to speak to first?
Interesting enough that the two young ladies and the young man in glasses in the back row, you all would come to the very front. We want to talk to you all first. And we all have been there and done that. We've tried it. But nevertheless, we appreciate you all joining us. We definitely want to pay homage and honor the hard work and the resiliency that you all have shown in your space with BPA. But you all here in the front, young lady down, and then we'll come around. If you all can just share your passion when it comes to BPA. Tell us what BPA means to you.
Here, because we have the microphone.
Okay, I'm Hannah Stearley, and I've just always been really interested in presentations. I came from Logos, so it's been something that I've kind of grown up doing. And when I heard about this opportunity, it really interested me. And then as I got more into it, I did a team presentation with Lauren, and it's really been a fun experience as well as a great learning experience.
I'm Lauren Freeman. This is my second year in BPA, but I'm a senior. But Miss Selm came up to me and talked me into doing it, and it was one of the best decisions I've done. I convinced Hannah to do it, and we did a presentation together, and it was really fun. So I just love it a lot, and I'm going to continue in college with business. So I'm just excited.
My name is Jesus Hernandez. I'm a senior, and this is my first year doing BPA. And I just wanted to do something with finance, look into it as maybe a career choice for my future.
Now, who wants to follow their lead? There we go.
That makes sense.
I'm an 11th grader at Richmond. Miss Sum has been nagging me to do BPA for however long. This is my first year. I didn't know much about it. Then I jumped in and I love it. I'll do it next year.
What are you doing in
Advanced Excel spreadsheet is the one I qualified for state.
Mr. Heine, by any chance, your mother's name? I'm sorry.
Corin.
Corin, yes, and your uncle Kurt, correct?
Yep.
Yes, we all were in school together in Hibbert back in the 90s. Hibbert, one of the finest junior high schools in all the world, as we know.
Yep.
But yes, now, are you as intelligent as your mother?
Maybe.
I love the humility. Thank you, Mr. Heine. Who's up next?
I'm Logan Priest. I'm a junior. I like BPA because it gives me a creative outlet that I don't really get in school. I like graphic design, so it's fun to put my skills to the test against other kids around the state.
Thank you, sir.
On Pushkar Mishra. I'm in ninth grade right now. I did BPA for multiple reasons. One is because it helps me pursue my field of choice. What I want to be is a medical professional. So what I did for my BPA topic was medical presentation, which really helped me like learn more about the field I'm going into. And basically, this is just an overall really fun experience, and I was glad to participate in it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'm Luke Yudi. I'm a senior. This is my first year doing BPA. I was recruited by Ethan Capchier and Owen Peters, who back there. I did the website design team with Xander Inderstro and Charles Frederick. I didn't do most of the coding. I didn't do any of the coding. I did most of the graphic design part of the website. And yeah, that's the part I did. I'm also doing 2 of the virtual events. I'm doing cybersecurity, which I just took the test for earlier today, and promotional photography, which I took submitted that picture a week ago. I really only decided to do it because Ethan here had been telling me to do it for so long, and I folded eventually. But I've enjoyed it a lot. Spending the time with my 2 teammates to make that website has been very enjoyable.
Now, Luke can also work for us over the summer,
I did.
right, in our technology department.
Yes, that's
So
right.
did Xander Inderstro.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the youngsters who used to be at the door in the back. Yeah, working hard. Working hard. Yes.
My name is Ethan Couch. I'm a senior. This is my 4th year doing BPA. I do ethics and professionalism and extemporaneous speech. I went to Anaheim last year. It was really fun. So, if I were to say something about BPA, I would recommend everyone to do it. I think, as a lot of you guys know, business is something that people go into. Like people work in businesses, teams, and there's something for everyone in BPA, whether it's medical, whether it's technology based. For me, that's more of like the ethics and I used to do HR and stuff. It's really interesting. So, if I were to say something about BPA, I'd recommend everyone to do it, and I've recruited a lot of these people. So,
He's going to have a job this summer.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, we should. Okay. Ethan, we're going to get you on the payroll.
Hi, I'm Fred Mendenhall. I've been doing BPA for 3 years. I've been to nationals, all 3, and I enjoy BPA because it helps people get ready for careers. And I'm kind of a computer science guy. I'm interested by that sort of stuff, so it offers me to have chances at certification and stuff like that for careers. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mendenhall.
I'm Jacob George. I'm a junior at Richmond. This is my 2nd year doing BPA. I got recruited by Fred Mendenhall and Owen Peters. And it's just been a really great experience. Last year I got to qualify for nationals. So I went to Anaheim, and all levels of competition are a lot of fun, and to get to see how you stack up against other people. It also teaches you like important life skills like presentation. I'm going to state for economic research individually and for a team project. So that's kind of got me on a career path to like finance and data analytics. So that's what I'm interested in.
my name is Xander Inderstro, and as you've heard, I'm on the web design team with Luke and Charlie. I did most of the front end web design, so all the stuff that people are looking at. We're making a website. It's a restaurant. Is what the requirements were. I'm also doing Java programming as my other event, and going to state for both of those currently.
Thanks, sir. Nice time.
I'm Lucy Couch, and I'm a junior this year. And this is my first year doing BPA. I just was like looking up to all these people, and I was like, "This is what the smart people are doing." And here I am. And I want to my brother Ethan too. So, I did a couple of team events, podcast production team, and ethics and professional ethics research. Anyways, so and it's pushed me a lot, and it's helped me. My teams have helped me a lot, and I'm grateful for them for all of that. And I'm excited to do it next year. And yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Avery Vandervoort. I started doing it because I did HOSA for the first 2 years, and when uh, we decided not to continue with that, I decided to do BPA because it had the medical approach to it and had healthcare stuff in it. So I'm doing the health research project as well as the podcast production team. I also went to Hibbert, so presentations and stuff like that is something I really enjoy. So I'm really excited to hopefully continue next year.
Miss Vanderpool, by any chance, are you as smart as your mother?
Maybe.
Who's next?
Hey, I'm you, Raj. Oh my bad. Sorry, guys.
Take your time.
I'm
I am too. I carry a handkerchief.
I'm in 10th grade. I chose BPA because it's a fun way to hang out with my friends and also be in like a learning environment and also a competitive environment. Like last year, I did 2 events and I qualified in state in both of them. And I didn't make it in either one. Last year, I made 8th place in one of my events, and the other one, I didn't even make it on like the finals. So it's more of like it pushed me to do better this year, to like try harder and to like really work on it. And what I love about BPA is that it gives me an outlet, and it also like gives me competition in a career that is very well suiting and a career that I would like to go into. Thank you.
Awesome.
My name is Cooper Smith. I'm a freshman. I remember being here at this meeting last year, and I really went into BPA because I knew I wanted to be more involved in school, and I really don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So I felt that BPA would be a good way to get more into the business side of things if I were ever to pursue a career in business. And I like to be able to compete against all the other kids and all these different events. It's been fun so far.
What were you here for last year?
I made state for the Indiana All State Orchestra.
Orchestra, that's right.
I believe you had a suit on there, didn't you?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And you got to talk. Next out.
My name is Carson Knight. I'm a junior. This is my first year at BPA. The reason I'm doing this is because I was recruited by Owen Peters, and I'm very glad that he did because now I'm stepping into new things that I've really never done before. I'm just super glad that I did. Thank you, Owen.
My name is Joanna Galloway. I'm a junior, and honestly, I'm not sure why I joined BPA. I think it just gave me something else to do. I felt like I don't have much going on, and honestly, it was kind of scary at first because I heard the word business. I wasn't too sure how much I wanted to do it, but looking at like all the opportunities there are, I think it's good for whoever wants to join. There's so many things you can do. I mean, I didn't even know there was like medical stuff in there. I was like, oh, I didn't think that'd be business related, but I thought that was pretty cool. I did something I thought would be like easy for me to do, and I really liked it, but it taught me like a lot of what my strengths and my weaknesses were, so that was nice. Yeah.
Thank you. 2 more gentlemen there in the back. I think one is named Owen.
My name is Love Patel. This is my first year doing BPA. I'm a
Hold
sophomore.
on 1 second. I'm gonna just come up just a little bit. The microphone is right
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Take your time, buddy. Boom.
Yeah. I'm a sophomore, and I did BPA because there's a lot of other people that I know doing it, and it's a great way to like introduce yourself to like different topics. So that's probably just why I did it.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
All right, master recruiter. Oh, look at there.
He and Ethan, they bring them in.
I'm Owen Peters. I'm a junior, and I've done BPA for all 3 years. And the reason I'm a fan of BPA and this organization is because it provides you with a lot of unique opportunities and experiences to face different challenges. Like you've heard about the range and variety of different things you can compete in. So the further you get to test out your abilities in more interesting ways and people and a different variety. So throughout my years, I started with like human resources, and I've done computer programming and computer modeling, graphic design, promotional materials. So that's what I went to nationals for last year, and I'm hoping to do the same this year.
questions from the board, comments?
Yeah, I feel like the group has about doubled since you guys were here last year. So it does seem like there's some recruitment going on.
Year after year, Miss Stone, we're impressed. You keep rocking and rolling over there.
And we are missing a few just because they had previous engagements. There are, I think they said there are going to be 15 of the students will be advancing on to state, but then they're also still doing fundraising. So Owen and Mason did come over and sell pizzas a little bit. So always remember every year. Well, it seems, I don't know if Mrs. Selm's going to agree with that, but they do pretty well with the pizza fundraiser, but to help cover costs.
And I can speak to the salesmanship and the business acumen of the two that came and sold me a pizza. So it was that's fun. Yeah, that's right.
So this may sound kind of funny, but I'm hoping some of my colleagues at my profession don't listen to me, but I wish there were about 3 or 4 people that I could bring who could have listened to you and how articulate you are, because I cannot teach articulation the way that you have done it there. I mean, your vocabulary, I know that you are winners. Your approaches, your delivery to us right now. You're going to be very successful. I know that. I just wish I had about 3 or 4 people who I'm working with right now who could listen to you, just do presentation, and you make us proud. Thank you so much. And especially you super recruiters.
Absolutely. Ethan and Owen, again, tremendous job. I'll share that again of some of the things that I heard you all reference, the peer-to-peer influence, the recruitment from Ethan, Owen, from others, just the idea that you can go and speak to your peers, convince them to be a part of this. I heard one of you all say that BPA has something for everyone, and you all indeed are a great representative. There's a long time behind that, indeed. You all are a great representation and symbolic of what our school community is all about. I also heard you all say that you look up. I think the young lady said that you look up to everyone that is a part of your group. And then lastly, going to the pride that Member Stevens just referenced. You mentioned that you want to see, Mr. Jordan, I think is your last name. You mentioned you want to see how you stack up. You all are about to go into competition. Remember that you're from Richmond. Remember and understand that the whole world is stacked against you. But the fact that we're all behind you, the community is behind you, Mr. Sales behind you, your families are behind you. Go and represent. Hold your heads high in competition. Do your very best, and come back the same successful youngster that you all will be going into it. So it's just remarkable. I get excited when I continue to be in the presence of greatness. So, and all of you go to college, come back and work for Richmond Community Schools. But thank you all. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have highlights and happenings.
President Walton, trustees, for our highlights and happenings that we have done with our systems and cabinet leadership. I just departed from our championship bowling team. We have BPA that we're representing, recognizing this evening. In due time, we'll be bringing our bowling team back to the podium to be honored and to pay homage to all the success they've had. This weekend, they go into competition at the semi-state level. They're in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I know that as I expressed to them just some hour ago for their practice, the whole city will be behind them as well. I know we have talked as a board of governors as to how we can continue to show support for our bowling team, and there's some things that I'll be presenting to you all as recommendations that we may be able to explore down the road to honor them. As far as happenings, last Tuesday evening, our board of education received an invitation from the Richmond Education Association Racial Equity Coalition to take part in a community forum regarding equity. I know that many of us were there to represent our board as well as speak to the equity policies that we have had and continue to improve upon that is already found within our corporation. I know that of that forum and of the community engagement on that evening, it was just great to see so many folks come together, rallying around ways in which we can improve the lot for all of our students, not just those in areas of prestige, but also those that at times have been underserved and underspoken for. So there's much more work we'll continue to put in motion, but we'll get it done. Mr. Brent Baker, our Chief of Elementary Education. Mr. Baker, floor is yours.
All right, good evening. I would like to recognize Charles Elementary that was listed by elementary school ranking in the Whitewater Valley. Charles Elementary ranked 133 out of all elementary schools in Indiana. And this is related to their iLearn language arts and math assessment. And then just two more things. We are working on a plan to have a VEX robotics team in each K-8 building at the beginning of next school year. And we are also working on a district-wide anonymous tip line that students, staff, and parents can use to increase safety and security in our buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Mr. Mark Fowler, Chief of Secondary Education.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wright. So one highlight, she's here tonight, so this is awesome. But last Saturday at the alumni game, Miss Ray Wolpe was recognized as the Distinguished Alumni. Which was awesome, and I'm actually going to roll that into one of my highlights, and that was just the atmosphere Saturday at the alumni game, and it was actually unbelievable. And I caught myself filming and sending it back to people that I was in education with in California, saying, you know, this is what Richmond is about, and it was so nice to just see the pride. In the alumni and the students, and we received a very kind email from someone in Centerville who just said, you know, I graduated from Northeastern. My family's in Centerville, but I've not been to an event like that in Richmond in years, and it was just so wonderful to see that, and to get that from people who aren't part of the community was wonderful. So it was just an awesome night. My second happening was I had the awesome opportunity to pronounce the spelling bee last night. Ms. Brunt was there as a judge, and we had a wonderful time. The kids were awesome. Mr. Baker did the welcome. The parents were great, and it was just like watching our students tonight in areas that they excel. Watching our third and fourth graders get up there and really showcase what they can do. It was awesome. So we had a great time. So it's been a fun 2 weeks. And yeah, it's great.
So, Mrs. Margaret, Chief of Central Education.
Thank you. With the hard work of Mrs. Bolser, Dr. Wright, and the board, with the increase of pay and for our support staff, we are filling many vacant roles. So with the onboarding of new paraprofessionals, we are offering paraprofessionals paid Tuesday professional development. So our first offering was Tuesday the 16th. The topic was de-escalation techniques, and we had 19 paraprofessionals attend. We have 3 more training dates scheduled for the rest of the school year. And then the next highlight is our disability awareness group had their first meeting to plan for Disability Awareness Month in March. The theme this year will be Life Without Limits. And we have 1 more meeting scheduled to finish the work to share with the district in March.
And Mrs. Martin, the beauty with the paraprofessionals having an opportunity to be professionally trained. When I had gone out to meet with teachers around the corporation, when Mrs. Bolzer had gone out to meet with teachers around the corporation, that's one of the things that the certified teachers were requesting, is that their paraprofessional counterparts receive adequate and quality training so that they would be able to be retained and stay in those roles. And I know that as a board, you all approved the TPI merits from some time ago. Again, this is it in motion. 19, you stated 19 has taken part in the PD sessions, and it's only going to get better. Mrs. Bolzer, our Chief of HR and Finance, the floor is yours.
Good evening. So the highlight I'm bringing forward is during our most recent leadership meeting, we had several of the principals report some of the exciting things going on in each of their buildings. So at RHS, Ms. Wolpe did share, as Elizabeth just mentioned, that all applied skill paraprofessional positions have been hired, that had not occurred since before the pandemic. At Dennis, there was a posting for a middle school science position in which we had 4 candidates apply. 1 year ago, we had the same position in which we had 0 applicants apply. So that was celebrated. At Test, we had a mid-year special education teaching position open, and we had multiple candidates who also applied for that, and credentialed candidates. At the elementaries, they reported being pleased with increased substitute coverage, so they were celebrating that feat. One of the happenings that's been going on is we were just issued our 2024 budget. So we worked with our DLGF field rep and are making sure all of those items in the budget are updated. But in order to do so, we were trying to close out the 2023 budget year. And so that's what most of this meeting is going to reflect, is some of those year-end processes. And also just it's a happening time in both the HR and business. I would say January is one of the busiest times of year. We have numerous state reports, numerous grants that are coming not only due with final expenditures, but also opening with the new grant cycles, as well as W-2s and 1095s. And so we're just rocking and rolling. In fact, I just sent out an email, all hands on deck tomorrow to step some W-2s. So
Thank you, Mrs. Bolger.
Thank you.
Mrs. Scout, our Chief of Operations. The floor is yours, ma'am.
All right, so the name of the game in the operations department is weather. And so I just want to send out a super huge thank you to our maintenance crews, to our custodians who are doing building checks anytime that temp dips below 15 degrees. They're out there twice a day, weekends, holidays, it doesn't matter. They're in their buildings making sure everything is still running and things are working well. So a huge thank you to them. I can't even say enough. Chris Pegg is our HVAC technician, and he has been making things happen, oftentimes alone. He is, working our systems for 14 buildings. Most of our buildings have multiple systems, which we may talk about today, may not. And he makes things happen for us. And so I just want to send out a super huge shout out to him and a thank you, because every time someone puts in a work order or calls and says, my room is hot, my room is cold, my building's hot, my building's cold, it's really him. And he makes some magic happen for us each and every day. So just kudos to him and the entire team that make a lot of things happen in our buildings. They do great work, and I'm super grateful for them. The other exciting highlight that we have is we will soon be officially rolling out and beginning our parent control application for parents. So if you have not already downloaded that application to track the transportation for your student, if you would like, please feel free to do so. There is information on our RCS website. There is a video by our very own Alex Hazelbaker that will walk you through the steps. And if you have any trouble at all, please contact our technology help desk, where they are ready to assist you. So for our parents and our families, that's going to be something really nice to have on a daily basis for those families that utilize our transportation services. So,
Karen, I had a question on that. And I think it was answered, but I think it needs to be made out to other parents that my child does not ride the bus in the morning and afternoon, but does ride a transport bus from one building to another building in the evening or in the after school. And I was told to wait a couple weeks and try to let the main regular bus riders first get rolled out. Is that correct?
it depends on the situation. Sometimes students aren't marked for transportation during the registration process. When that happens, it can take a couple of weeks to make sure that everything is syncing correctly so that the application talks appropriately for your student. That is the primary situation in which you will find it takes a little bit of time. Parents can go in and update their registration information on PowerSchool at any time, or they can contact their building or that technology help desk to do so. I will say oftentimes parents don't check mark that yes for transportation. And if students are riding to like Boys and Girls Club or to Y Care or to Girls Inc., those after school programs, because they're offered to each student that registers in that program, sometimes that box doesn't get checked by the parent during registration. So that will cause issues with the Parent Patrol app because it will not be talking appropriately with the transportation software. That's when it could take some time.
Yeah.
So for the most part, we're trying to get those changes made within a 48-hour window when possible. But those are the things that we're seeing that take just a little bit longer.
They just stress the importance of having everybody's information updated and correct. And
Correct. Your
so
email.
parents, if you move, if you change emails, change phones, and please update the system to not just for this, but we have an ability to get a hold of you in case there's a need to.
Right.
Mr. Scott, we definitely appreciate you and the operations team, again, as you referenced, and as is the case when we have inclement weather, your team, as well as many of us, the pressure mounts, but we always make decisions that are in the best interest of the safety and security of students, while also still trying to keep a fully functioning educational experience. Mrs. Bridget Hazelbaker, our communications and marketing coordinator, will now rejoin us at the podium to share her highlight happening from the communications and marketing office. Mrs. Hazelbaker.
I think communications and marketing for a lot of networking with a lot of the staff at this table. So Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast was wonderful at the Ivy Tech. We were able to attend that. Several of us and many of our Richmond High School students also performed and did presentations, some spoken word on that for us. Also attended the chamber dinner. That was a great time also to network with some other folks. Also have attended the Boys and Girls Club annual dinner. Did that as well. Been working with Mrs. Scalf on the ID cards. They've all arrived. So I'm very excited about that. And then we're also excited to share information with our families that we received the voucher for that power outage day. So that was that was great news. And then also just to share that information about the snow day to our families that we will be making that up on President's Day in February 19th.
Thank you, Mrs. Hazelbaker. And just for further clarity again, the state did issue us and award us a waiver for the day in which
I did the voucher. I'm so sorry.
You're fine. You're fine. For the day in which we had the power outage earlier in this school season, the state did come back and acknowledge and provide us with a waiver. So that day will not need to be made up. However, as Mrs. Hazelbaker referenced, the day that we had out for inclement weather last Friday, that day will be made up during President's Day. And so thank you all. Questions, comments?
All right. Next, we have public commentary.
We do not have any public commentary.
Okay. Moving on to consent items. Let the record show also, we only have 6 members in attendance tonight, so the votes can be out of 6.
President Walton, trustees, I come before you all to ask for approval for consent items 5.01 through 5.07 as presented, along with the addendum 5.02 human resources.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion by member Zaleski, second by member Stevens. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say the same sign. Motion carries 6-0. All right, next we have a public hearing. And on the superintendent's contract, I would like to declare the hearing open. The purpose of this hearing is to offer the public an opportunity for comments and questions regarding the proposed new contract for the superintendent. The notice of a public meeting on the new contract for the superintendent was published on the plating item on January 12th, 2024, and the publisher's affidavit will be included within the minutes. The hearing is open for comment. Seeing none, move to motion, or I will close the public hearing on the proposed contract and get back to the regular board meeting. All right, next up is action items.
President Walton, trustees, come before you all for action item 7.01, TBRI Phase 2. I'm going to ask that Mrs. Margaret, our Chief of Exceptional Learning, come back to the podium along with her guests. Mrs. Margaret, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So last May, the board approved work with Hope Light to train our secondary buildings in the TBRI framework. So before I present action item 7.1, I would like our secondary team to provide an update on the implementation of TBRI in their respective buildings and the impact of that work. So Mrs. Wolfe, Mrs. Cooper, and Mrs. Brazel, if you'll come on up, and I think Trey, we're ready for that PowerPoint. Not panic, right? Yeah.
Welcome, ladies.
Hi. Is he gonna pull the?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he's working on it right now.
All right.
And while he's doing that, we totally appreciate you all being with us this evening and taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us.
So we're in the presence of distinguished alumni.
Oh, yes, we are.
Yes, yes.
Truly distinguished alumni.
Enter.
Spacebar.
Okay. All right. I'll talk about Richmond High School, obviously, first. Richmond High School, we have essentially focused on positive relationships for many years as the foundation for our culture at RHS, where we really work to make all students feel valued, respected, safe, and loved. One of the things that I was so excited to hear after our first group of teachers went to the TBRI consultation when Jessica came back, and she meets with teachers during their prep periods. So she emailed me after the 2 days, and she said, I had another great day with your staff. Your teachers have such a great mindset for prioritizing relationships with students and working to meet their needs. I can see the firm foundation you've all created very clearly, and am super proud of the work you do at RHS. That is a tribute to my teachers and my staff members, because we're all on the same team, and we're all very passionate about positive relationships. We always talk about our 5 R's, and positive relationships is the first one. Okay, how are we doing this? In 2022-23, and I've got to back it up, and Elizabeth help me here. In 2021-22, the district established the SEBW cadre, and that was teachers who were trained in social, emotional behavior wellness. All right. So I had a group of teachers that were trained, and they came back and they said, okay, what are we going to do to help educate the staff, not only about social emotional behavior and wellness, but also teen brain research, so we understand how that teen brain functions. So our SEBW team, they meet monthly to discuss the needs and to plan appropriate professional developments based on our master or our yearly professional development schedule. Our teachers meet in 4 groups led by an SEBW cadre teacher once a month. All right. This year we're doing it the second Tuesday of every month. So we're in smaller groups. We get to discuss and we get to talk. Teachers get to share ideas and, how do you deal with this behavior? Or what do you do for this? What TBRI has done, TBRI has not only supported the work that was started by the district, but it has enhanced it. And my last group of teachers are actually being trained today and tomorrow. But again, we continue with our SEBW TBRI focus on the second Tuesday of every month. Well, what has happened from all of this occurring is that we've done some implementation of some things that we are extremely proud of. One is we have created, and this was last year that we did this, we have created what we call reset areas with a caring adult. So if I'm a teacher and Ray is off the wall today and can't sit in her seat, I can say, Ray, you need to go take a reset, 10 minutes, and you're going to go to
the attendance office, or you're going to go to Mr. Hiller in one of the rooms. And so the students go, reset, and then they get to go back to class. So it turns from perhaps a behavioral issue where they're out of class the entire period, they go, reset, and they go back to class. We also have a teacher reset room, which our teachers use. It's wonderful. I have to thank Josh Amix and Stephanie Baker have been instrumental in making all of this happen for us. And they were so excited to put together the teacher reset room. I mean, we were all in there in the chairs, you know, and then other teachers came in. But the other thing that Stephanie and Josh were instrumental in is the Handle with Care initiative. We administrators in all the buildings in the district get a Handle with Care. You don't know what happened to the child. You don't ask any details. You just know you need to handle them with care that day. We send it out to all of our teachers. Nobody asks why. Nobody talks to the student, but you just know to kind of watch after them that day and make sure that they're okay. And then lastly, we do restorative sessions. We are trying to change. We're trying to move from consequences, you know, we're going to suspend you, we're going to da to you, to changing behaviors. And Josh Amix is our resident expert on leading restorative sessions. Both students have to agree to it. All right. Students may have gotten in an altercation. Students may have, maybe they're bullying, maybe they're saying something. Social media is always a great big one. But most students have to agree to sit down and let Mr. Amix kind of lead the conversation. It is unbelievable what can happen in those sessions. They'll walk out hugging each other or shaking hands. And so we are extremely proud of that. And again, I want to thank the district for supporting not only the SEBW, but the TBRI. And I'll tell you why. Oh, well, I won't tell you why yet. Here are some of our data. We did not put in the data from 2021. We were hybrid. In 21-22, we were, you know, in mask. So what we did was we put the green is 2022, the blue is 23-24. Now, if you'll notice in the green, in January of 2023, anybody remember what happened to us then? We had a flood. They were all homes. So we didn't have any referrals. All right. So I think we had one for somebody doing something on the Google Meet. So you can see that our discipline referrals have decreased. Again, part of that is all of us together. And I'm not just talking about Richmond High School. I'm talking about the district and what we are doing for our kids. Knowing that these kids in poverty bring a lot of baggage with them. And so it is imperative that we take care of them. Also, we put in the national, the red line at the top is the 75th percentile nationally. The median, you can see where that is. And then the 25% is the one, the blue line right below. We are pretty much, except in September, we're down in that 25th percentile. So, but I just want to finish my part with, I was so moved by this statement. I was reading the book Dare to Lead, and I was so moved when I read this because I immediately thought about RCS and what we do. And It's just a quote I took out of the book, but I underlined it. I turned the page down. But we can't always ask our students to take off the armor at home or even on their way to school, because their emotional and physical safety may require self-protection. But what we can do, what RCS is doing, and what we are ethically called to do, is create a space in our schools and classrooms where all students can walk in and for that day or for that hour, take off the crushing weight of their armor, hang it on a rack, and open their heart to truly being seen. We should never underestimate the benefit to a child of having a place to belong, even one where they can take off their armor. It can, and often does, change the trajectory of their life. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank my colleagues in elementary and everyone, because this is who we are in Richmond Community Schools. We take care of our kids. We love our kids. And that's why they're all so successful. So thank you. I'm done.
I gotta follow her and Renee Brown. Sorry. Okay, well. Hi, I'm Crystal Hoover in Ball Dennis Middle School.
No pressure.
No pressure. But I would like to say, first off, I am so incredibly proud of my staff. My staff has worked wonders the past year or two. I cannot say enough good things about my staff because they have embraced TBRI. They have embraced the concept of we teach middle school. They're 12 and 13. Nobody ever says, man, I really wish I could go back to middle school, because nobody really wants to go back to middle school. It is a tough time in somebody growing up. And getting my staff to recognize that and recognize that, we all have bad days. As adults, most of us can check it out the door before we walk in and have a meeting or walk in and have to do our job. Our kids, if the kids just got yelled at for 30 minutes on the way to work or the way to school from a parent, and then they walk out of the car and they walk right into the building, they can't check that out the door. So getting the staff to understand the why of why our students are misbehaving has been just a huge, phenomenal change within the building. We still have high expectations. We still hold our kids accountable. TBRI is, we don't chuck out the consequences because those are still there. What we do is we look at the why. Why are our students coming in and getting to the root of that? Because the ultimate goal is to change the behavior, not simply punish. And so now I have my staff, when they've gotten, teaming is a part of it, but I have my staff, if they see a kid who's having a bad day, they'll go like, hey, this kid had a bad day in my class. They having a bad day in you. And before you know it, the team is talking about the student. And instead of sending the student down with a referral and a consequence, they're like, well, how about we have the counselor come and talk to them? Let's send the student to the counselor. And then you find out a bunch of stuff that's going on, and you're kind of like, okay, I understand why you are having a bad day. So we're looking beyond just the consequences and getting to the root of why are our students behaving in the manner in which they are. And then also, every day is a new day. You could have a bad day, and, sometimes kids have bad days, but that does not mean they're not going to have a good day the next day. Kids are so resilient, and kids can be like, oh, I hate you one day, and love you the next. And that's kids. So I just want to kind of give a shout out to my staff. I'm so proud of them. And the referrals, I did put a little bit of data on here. We've dropped our referrals by about 200 in our first semester alone. And that is my staff. That is all my staff. That is not something we're necessarily doing different up in the admin when we're giving consequences. It's before what they're doing before they even get to the office. And it's reflective of that. So that's my shout out to TBRI, because TBRI and my staff is also, last group is going through training today. And I had a group of men come out and say, wow, this was probably the best PD I've sat in. I've learned so much about myself today and what I'm bringing into the classroom, because I'm bringing my own trauma into the classroom, and that's how I'm responding to the kids. And I'm recognizing that now. So shout out to TBRI. I know I came up and talked about TBRI before, but I love TBRI. So that's my skill. Brene Brown. I'm sorry.
I don't have Brene Brown, but I have a cute picture.
There we go.
That's right.
There we go.
Elementary.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, so I just thought I would talk a little bit about what it looks like for our kids at test and then what it looks like for our staff at test. So for our kids, we're doing lessons in homeroom about our brains and our feelings. We're reinforcing that with our LCD projectors that are out in the hallway. So when the kids are walking down the hallway, they're seeing their house points and then they're seeing fun facts about their brain. We do family meetings, which is part of the house structure that they started last year with Get Your Teach On, and that just helps build connections across classrooms. So that picture right there is from a family meeting where we were doing a rock, paper, scissors tournament. And so that's the one time that test kind of looks like a passing period, because we just send them out and they all have to find, because most of the time they're with their class and their teacher and they're walking as a group, right? But when we have family meeting, it's a little wild because all these 5th and 6th graders are like,
of those.
but they're like, I have to walk by myself, and they do, and they find their spot. And so it's really, pretty much the only time that the 5th and the 6th graders are mixing, and they're mixing with staff that they don't ordinarily see. So those family meetings just give them a chance to build connections across the whole school and not just within their classroom group. And then for kids, hopefully it looks like adults who are willing to listen, give breaks before we get to discipline, help them process feelings, mediate conflict before it gets to discipline, right? So for kids, it's all about what happens before they get sent to the office because they're in trouble, right? And then for staff, teacher reset areas with empathy for ourselves, because we're all humans who are bringing a lot to a very challenging job. And it's also just understanding that TBRI is a toolbox that we're going to use with students before traditional discipline. So my data that I brought is the percentage of students at test. The green is the kids who have 0 to 1 referral. So if you look right now, 80% of the students at test have 0 to 1 referral because of all those things that we're doing to support them before they get there. And you can see that that wasn't always true, right? So your yellow band is 2 to 5. So they showed a little bit of improvement last year from the year before. And then this year we're seeing even more trending in that direction. So we're really proud of all of our kids who are making super good choices, and also all of the staff that are helping them do that are being supportive to them through what they've learned through TBRA. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Exciting.
Great stuff to see the turnaround and discipline and everything at the lower levels. It's pretty impressive. I'm just kind of taken back by it. It's good job.
Principles I have shared with our board of trustees on numerous occasions. Psychologist Abraham Mask and his hierarchy of needs theory. We've talked about it during our corporate-wide leadership meetings for some time, and how it is that students reach that level of self-actualization. It starts, however, with the baseline of safety and security. Mrs. Wolke, I know you alluded to the environments that we're creating. Mrs. Cooper, we've celebrated the success that you all have seen when it comes to the school culture and climate there at Dennis. Mrs. Rouse, we know that in a very short period of time, you have taken that test intermediate school to new levels and new heights. I know that we have Mr. Jordan, who's sitting in the back quietly as the proud principal of Star Elementary School, and we have a number of principals that right now are really exercising true leadership, and we appreciate you for it. I've said and I've referenced, and they've heard me say it time and again. They being our astute school board, that a school building would take on the persona of its principal and of its leaders. And you all continue to take our schoolhouses to new heights with the trust that you instill and establish with the faculty and staff, with their buy-in and commitment to kids. keeping them at the forefront. We can't thank you enough. Again, and the proof is in the pudding as we continue to produce results. So we definitely thank you all, but as a board on their behalf, and as a member of our administrative team, we also thank you all because they courageously, during our one of our last meetings, acknowledged the appreciation as a majority in what it is that you all do with the salary increases. So we thank you all for what you do. We thank you all for what it is that we all do as leaders. And again, we'll continue to press forward and press on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to piggy back off of what Crystal's teacher said too. And I think the PD part of it is really important, and they do a wonderful job of presenting the content and making it meaningful to teachers and useful for them to use in their classroom. But the structure of how they continue to support after you leave PD is also why this works. Ray mentioned that they have consultation days where they meet with teachers 3 times a year to check in. How are things going? How can we support you? They meet with the admin team. They meet with me. So this work is always in the forefront of what you're doing. And many times you go to PD and you leave and there's no follow-up from it. And so I think that's one piece of the way this is structured, one piece of why it's so successful. So I wanted you, oh, did you have something? Okay. So I wanted you just to hear how things were going so far before you voted on continuing to implement this district-wide. And I know Mrs. Jordan reached out to me earlier in the year and was like, please, I want to be a pilot for TBRI. So I know she's excited to see this on the agenda for support for next year. And there is an opportunity for administrators to get a jump start on training at the end of February. And so we have 5 administrators that are excited to be able to go to implement this work. So I have attached the consulting agreement with Hope of Life, and so it's submitted for your consideration and approval for training for the implementation of TBRI at the rest of our elementary buildings, Baxter and Hibbert.
I make a motion to approve action item 7.01, the TBRI phase 2.
I second.
Got a motion by Ms. Brunton, a second by Ms. Stoltz. Any comments or questions?
Only question is, what fund is that being pulled out of? Is that
That's going to be paid out of our Medicaid dollars.
Perfect. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, stick with saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Vote passes 6-0. Next is donations.
President Warren and trustees, I'm going to ask that Chief of HR and Finance, Ms. Jamie Bolter, come back to the floor for action items 7.02 through action items 7.07. Mrs. Bolter, we're with you for a while here.
You will be, and I apologize in advance. Before you are 3 donations that were graciously donated. One by the Emorys in the amount of $100 to Civic Hall. One by Miss Wolpe to the high school for staff celebration in the amount of $392.08. And lastly, Richmond Furniture Gallery to the high school choir for $500.
I move to approve the donations as presented. Second.
Motion by member Stevens, second by member Zaleski. Any comments or questions?
I have a question, not necessarily about this in general, but I had a lot of people ask me after Saturday or during. We had a lot of like cheerleaders that came from out of town. Just how do they donate? You know, how can they, you know, figure out which program? You know, does it really come? Do you all elicit that? Does it go through the alumni association? So I just thought it'd be a good time to kind of.
A lot of them individually seek, so the individual sponsors seek for their donations.
Okay.
But we also do here as well and can help guide them. But I know the Alumni Association definitely currently seeks donations as well.
Okay.
So
However else,
we graciously accept any donations.
yes, we always do, no doubt. And I know that a few years ago, Mr. High and others had some conversations, and we want to flesh some of those conversations and rehash them now to find out how better we can allow for and graciously receive such donations.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
There's some ideas that will be presented to you all in time.
Perfect. That'd be great.
My comment is to thank you for those that did the donating. right. Seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor of approving, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Vote carries 6-0. Next is 7.03, personnel hiring and background checks. Mr. Bolster Beckman.
Presented for your approval is the personnel hiring and background report. These are employment and offenses that would not exclude any employees from employment pursuant to Indiana code.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by member Zaleski, second by member Stoltz. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Passes 6-0. Next is 7.04, resolution number 2401-1, resolution to transfer appropriation.
The Board of School Trustees of Richmond Community Schools may approve the transfer of money from one major budget classification to another if the transfer does not require the expenditure of more money than the total amount set out in the budget as finally determined, and if the transfer is approved at a regular public meeting and by the proper ordinance. Attached for your approval are the year end in order to make sure all of our accounts are properly reported on our Form 9.
I move that we approve resolution number 2401-1.
Second.
Motion by member Stoltz, second by member Zaleski. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Next is 7.05, resolution number 2401-2, resolution to transfer amounts from education fund to operation fund.
Thank you. The Board of School Trustees of Richmond Community Schools may approve the transfer of money from the Education Fund to the Operations Fund pursuant to Indiana Code 20-40-2-6 and will make every reasonable effort to transfer not more than 15% of the total revenue deposited into the school corporation's education fund. The board authorizes an amount not to exceed $5,935,459.50 from the education fund to the operations fund to reimburse the operations fund for expenses that are not allocated to student instruction and learning under IC 20-42.5 for the period of January 1 to December 31st of 2024. Also included is a estimate of what is going to, because what we do is pass the ceiling, not to exceed, but I've also included a summation of what we have budgeted to allow, which is a decrease from the current amount that you can see up in your agenda under the transfers to what is included in there, trying to keep it at 13.5 as we try to keep some of that money into the education fund as we're looking to move some of the operational funding to debt service, and having more flexibility to keep some more of those dollars in the classroom.
I move that we approve resolution number 2401-2.
Second. Motion by member Stoltz, second by member Stevens. Any comments or questions?
I would just say we keep track of that percentage that we're transferring over the next few years to see how successful we are in our plan to retain funds in the education fund, which is the hope and goals of the debt issuance.
I will continue to keep that graph and keep it updated as I have been under the transfer items under the consent agenda so that you guys can have that and refer back to it on a monthly basis.
Any more comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Next is 7.06, resolution number 2401-3, resolution to carry appropriation for 2024.
The Board of School Trustees of Richmond Community Schools may approve the budget appropriation carried forward to 2024 for items and services purchased in 2023 that will not have closure as of December 31st, 2023. In front of you is the resolution and the verification report that itemizes all of the encumbrance carry forward. What I will tell you is within that report are some of the ones that, if you recall, a couple months ago that we passed a resolution to reimburse so that we could go ahead and get the jump start on ordering to make sure that some of the materials are here ahead of the summer months when the projects would occur. But we have the option to reimburse ourselves from the debt service issuance.
Move that we approve resolution number 2401-3.
Second.
Motion by member Stoltz, second by member Zaleski. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Vote passes 6-0. Next is 7.07, resolution number 2401-4, resolution to authorize payments prior to board approval.
This is an annual resolution that the board may authorize the issuance of payments prior to board approval to avoid penalty and or interest charges and or allow daily operations to continue. Claims paid will be presented to the board for approval at the next regularly monthly docket following the issuance of the payment.
Move that we approve resolution number 2401-4.
Second.
Motion by member Stoltz, second by member Zaleski. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Next is 7.08, conflict of interest statements.
President Walton, trustees, I come before you all to ask for approval of action item 7.08 as presented.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by member Zaleski, second by member Stoltz. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, clarifying question. So if something were to change throughout the course of the year and you needed to add something to your conflict of interest statement, is that something we would just report to whom?
Fine.
Okay.
Be fine, or Cindy, either one.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Vote passes 6-0. Next is 7.09, the 2024-2025 high school curriculum guide.
President Walton, please, Mr. Mark Fowler, Chief of Center Education.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wright. President Walton, trustees, what you have is the 2024-2025 curriculum guide for next year to register 8th grade students and students start to sign up for classes. This is something we annually do so that we can get this out. Kids know what they're signing up for, pathways, things like that. So this is an annual renewal of the 2024-25 curriculum.
I move to approve 7.09, the 2024-2025 high school curriculum guide is presented. Second.
Motion by member Stevens, second by member Zaleski. Any comments or questions?
So last year, I remember there was, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
There was some discussion on some of the valedictorian. None of that language has changed from last year's document that was approved. Is that correct?
Correct. The way I remember in this curriculum guide is starting with the class of 2027, I believe, there will be a new valedictorian language. And that is in this document as well, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. Just clarification question.
Right. And the idea being not wanting to change the field, so to speak.
Midstream.
Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, I appreciate the time that went into this because this was, I mean, just looking through it, I was like, oh, that really clarified. The red helped me see, but I was glad to see retaking a course for a better grade. I love that. I mean, I know a lot of colleges do that and it makes sense to, you know, give people a second chance to retake something and erase that grade and get something better. So
Yeah,
it was glad to
thank
see
you
that.
for that. And I want to give a huge thank you to Miss Volpe because she is just so open to feedback. And as we literally went through this with her team page by page and just with kids in mind, right? And the second thing, and I hope we continue to do this with the curriculum guide, is I would like us to look at this with eyes that aren't in education, right? When we hand this to parents, can they look at this and say, this is a pathway to success for my kids? And so we're going to continue to make efforts in that this document is usable, tangible for parents to be able to decipher that. So
My comment is along those lines a little bit. You know, as a parent too, I can say last year I didn't see this until practice or freshman orientation, and my son had already picked classes, and then you're kind of no, I thought this was great. Super helpful, and I would like you guys to see if you've just sent it to parents 8 times. Like it is so helpful. Just over communicate it, and you know, really, I think sets up, especially the 8th graders coming in on. There's so many different options. You know, I was reading through this, and I just thought about when we were in high school. It was you showed up, and here's your schedule, and you just that's what it was, and we didn't have options. So this is just great to see and very
That'd be
promising.
great to send out like Parent Square or something like that, like halfway through the 8th grade year. So
Yeah, and the earlier they probably got it, the better too. Because you know, 13, 14-year-old, what classes they're going to pick versus.
So the idea, we've had a few 8th grade meetings about 8th grade transitions and how do we schedule for courses, and so the idea behind getting this approved is getting this into the hands of 8th grade counselors, 8th grade teachers, and let's start talking to them now before they get here, so they can understand and have some context for, oh, this is the class they were talking about. So yeah, we're gonna try to over communicate.
Yeah. And this is also just another example, as we've talked for several years, and of what I referenced as far as the visionary perspective, quality tier 1 instruction, systemic alignment, and social emotional supports. This is another great example of that systemic alignment. And as we've talked, as spoke by leadership team members, it makes a huge difference, a major difference, because this also has a vertical as well as descending, articulated effect on what happens even at the elementary level. And so this is great.
any other comments or questions? All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. 7.10, request to advertise notice to bidders for RHS and Fairview summer projects.
President Walton, trustees, I ask that Mrs. Karen Scout, our Chief of Operations, rejoin the conversation for requesting approval. Mrs. Scout.
Good evening. Before you tonight is a request to advertise for multiple projects that will occur this summer. The first being Fairview Structure. The first notice will be published in the Palladium item not later than February 16th, 2024. The second notice will be published not later than February 23rd, 2024. We have proposed a bid opening date of Monday, March 4th, not later than 5 p.m. That is subject to change, but it will not occur any later than that. Or earlier than that, I'm sorry. And then the proposed recommendation to the board would come Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. We have a project at Richmond High School for an HVAC unit in the art TV radio area. The first notice would be published in the Palladium item not later than January 26th. The second, not later than February 2nd, 2024. The proposed bid opening is Tuesday, February 20th, not later than 5 p.m. And the proposed recommendation would come to the board Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. The last project requesting to advertise tonight is Richmond High School roof replacement project. That roof area would be around the door 50 Four Corners area over to the library in Holer and Park. We are writing alternates in that program depending on pricing so that we can get as much done as possible. The first notice would publish in the Palladium item not later than February 16th, 2024. The second, not later than February 23rd, 2024. The proposed bid opening is Wednesday, March 6th, 2024, not later than 5 p.m. And then the proposed recommendation to the board would come Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. Additional information is provided to the board on these projects. And tonight it is my recommendation that we approve the request to advertise to the notice to bidders as it has been presented.
I move that we approve the request to advertise notice to bidders for both of these RHS and Fairview summer projects.
Second.
Motion by member Stoltz, second by member Stevens. Any comments or questions?
Karen, were these planned? I mean, were these expected things that were going to happen? They're in
Yes.
budgeted for them because we knew that.
Yes. Yes, so the Fairview repairs have been budgeted for most of last year. It was just figuring out all of the specifications needed in order to make that happen. The high school roof and the HVAC unit was a part of the ESSER 3 plans, so that is finalizing that. We will use those to fund most of that. We have also set aside funds for this in the budget, or as Mrs. Bolzer spoke to before, in debt issuance. If we determine to take that out, it would be possible that those are the reimbursable funds for that project as well. It would be the goal that we would complete it in full, so it may be a little more than ESSER has, and that was written specifically to cover any Davis-Bacon rules in that project as well.
Remind me of the ESSER 3 deadline, the drop dead of.
So the expended deadline is December of, you have to request by December 15th. So we don't pay ahead. So we push that to usually the November docket, except in extreme circumstances at which it would be December. But you have to have everything encumbered and on the books by September 30. So the goal is that this would be done before we come back from summer break, as long as everything comes in as it should.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Next up is the Board of Finance Organization. I would entertain a motion to close the Board of School Trustees meeting and convene as the Board of Finance.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. So I would entertain a motion to elect the school board president and secretary as the president and secretary of the Board of Finance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by member Zaleski, second by member Stevens. Any comments or questions? All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mrs. Bolzer.
Thank you. In front of you this evening and presented for your review is the summary report of finance investments for the calendar year of 2023. The total interest received in 2023 was $335,775.15. This is up from $83,133.86 in the prior year. A few of the investment changes that were made in addition to the increased rates was in September, we did restructures from JP Morgan accounts. We modified the accounts to a sweep account, which resulted in a higher interest bearing availability while providing money needed for cash flow purposes. The anticipated annualized increase in interest bearing revenue is estimated to be approximately $150,000 based on the fourth quarter of 2023. Also, the fall distribution of property taxes were requested in advanced draw increments. Beginning in September of 2023, 95% of money collected for Richmond Community Schools at the time of the request must be distributed so that the unit can realize the interest rather than the county. RCS requested 3 advanced draws ahead of the final distribution. This allowed approximately $1 million in advanced revenue received by RCS to invest. That same strategy will be utilized at the spring and the fall installments as well.
I move that we accept this report as presented.
Second.
Motion by member Stoll, second by member Zaleski. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0.
I do appreciate just some different strategies to allow the money that we have work for us.
Thank you. And we'll continue to review that, as I know that there's always modifications that can be ongoing. So also in front of you, I wanted to provide a couple other items. The Distressed Unit Appeal Board released the annual update of the school corporation's fiscal indicators as required by Indiana law. The update includes calendar year 2022 financial information, so it's always kind of somewhat behind. I did provide the link for you. That's also available on the state's website and is very able to link as well. So I wanted to make sure you have that information readily available. Also, and I'm going to cue Trey back there, is the finance report for 2023. And I have linked it also in the public sector of the board information, so that's readily available. So just to walk you through, as I know he's pulling it up here, just a few of the items throughout the year, I think, that are of important to note. I wanted to start with cash balance benchmarks. Is this something I can control from here, Trey, or?
You can't argue.
I'll let you click. The cash balance benchmarks. The Governmental Finance Officers Association, if you want to go ahead and go forward one there, thank you, recommends a 2-month of cash reserve, which is approximately about a 16.7% cash reserve basis. The Indiana School Board Association recommends, their recommendation is more based off of school size, and I provided those incremental differences. In fact, I went most recently through an ISBA session, and their slides are the same as they were in previous years. So they haven't changed their benchmark recommendations. Small districts are recommended closer to 25%. Medium districts are 15 to 20, depending on board goals. It could be higher. Larger districts are 10% on average, but can be as low as 5% or as high as 20%, depending on policy. So I was looking to target more on that medium district, 15 to 20% threshold. So as you look at this next slide, which Trey has up. Now, ahead of this, I want to make sure I say these next few funds and slides are kind of somewhat grouped together, and I do summarize them for you. But I also think it's important to look at each fund individually. So I don't want this first slide to scare you. Just know that it's going to be continued in the next slide. The first one is the cash balance at year end for the education fund at just over $1 million. You can see the green hash marks. That represents the 15 to 20% threshold of the annualized spending out of the education fund. I do want to note that the annual expenditures were at 38.5 million gross. However, I think it's important to peel out those ed to op transfers to just realize the true expenditures, which are the 33.1. So that means we have 3.05% of cash reserve in the education fund. You would think, well, that's rather low compared to where I just said that we need to be. But if you look at the next slideshow, since these funds are interactive anymore, the operations fund finished with an 8.8 million cash balance. The annual expenditures for 23 did increase. It was at 14.6 million gross. You can see the green lines down below, and the red line, which is where our cash balance ended up, was well above the recommendation at 60.52 cash reserve. The next slide is the rainy day.
I think it's important to note on the operations fund, being a property tax fund, that there's 2 revenue points essentially in that.
Yeah.
We just had our last revenue point in November, and that 8.8 is to tide us over essentially till May on the next property tax date. So
And that-
when you look at 8.8 in there, you go, wow, there's a bunch in there. It is to tide us over till May.
You will start to see that dip because we
Yeah.
just got the rest of the property tax draw, to Mr. Selesky's point. Also, what we're going to try to do is to balance out the revenue that's coming from the education fund so that we can anticipate the educational draws a little bit more. Right now, they vary. We're going to just try to provide a percentage base point, so it's a more steadfast line, so it's more predictability from the education fund, and you'll see that as we go through a little bit as well. The cash balance in the rainy day fund ended at 4.1 million. There were no expenditures out of this account. There was an encumbrance that was carried forward, and I'll show that in a slide to come. So you can see the green lines at the very bottom because there wasn't any expenditure out of that account, and that is pretty routine. We do budget up to $700,000 for unanticipated expenditures or emergency, but that rainy day fund is doing well. So the next slide, I did want to forget the debt service fund. I do look at it a little bit different though, because there is state statute that sets the threshold for the operating balance within the debt service fund. So as you can see through here, our cash balance ended just shy of 290,000. We did expend 2.8 million. The statutes that we are following is because all of our debt was issued after July 1st of 2014. So we go by that 15% rule. So basically 15% of the debt for the year after the budget year for the debt accrued is what you can retain in the operating balance. I gave an example of that for 2024 down below. So you can see basically it's the lines 18A and 18B. Those are what are added together to multiply times that 15%. That's how you get that 15% threshold. They're all then added together. So we made sure that we maximized that amount as we issued our debt management plan for this year. So we are maximizing the operating balance. The next is just a cash balance summary. And what I did here was, that is the summary of the education, operations, and rainy day. So you can see that we are retaining about 29.3% of our annual expenditures across those funds, which is a strong place to be. The next slide, though, I did think it was important to make sure you know we are carrying a high amount of encumbrances forward out of the 2023 budget into the 2024 budget, especially in operations. It was a rather high. Like I said, some of that can be reimbursed to the fund after we issue the debt. So with all the encumbrances of 3.8 million out of the operations, that put us at about a 19.65% cash reserve balance between the three funds. Moving forward to the annual revenue. This is just a snippet, the next page for the education fund. Each month, there's a financial statement report that's in the the monthly finance report. This is the revenue section of that just shows you how we receive each of the budget categories for the revenue. So this is the education fund. You can just see where the majority of our fund is received, which is under the state support. It is important to note that moving forward for 2024, the non-English speaking grant, also referred to as the NEST, is not going to be a separate maintained grant. It's going to be included into our state tuition grant. So what we're going to need to do is probably do an additional appropriation sometime throughout that year to make sure we're encumbering those costs out of the education fund as well, since we're receiving that money now into the education fund. The next, to Pete's point, is the breakdown of the operational fund. You can see what comes from property taxes, and you can see what is coming from the transfer from the one fund to the other, and the difference of percentage of those. Also within your monthly report. It's an expanded view, so you can see it monthly. So you can see when those high tick points, usually on the final settlement of June and December, come. So it's a holding basis, as in it is anticipated for those cash balances to dwindle until our next advanced draw, which I plan for to be in March. Moving forward to the annual expenditure out of the education fund. Again, this is just a snippet too of what is presented monthly. This is just in totality for the expenses out of the education fund. I try to break them down for you based off of how they're categorized in the adopted budget that you adopt. You adopt the budget based off of an instructional category, support services, operation of non-instructional services, and then any debt. And then within each of those, I have subcategories to show you salary and benefits, supplies to services, so that you can see those between each fund. On the next slide, it's just a grouping. It's more of a summary to show you that we do spend 96.32% of our total expenses out of the education fund in salary and benefits. That is removing the ed to op transfer, but that is a very high amount that's being utilized for salary and wages. That does include our building level leaders. That does include our classroom teachers and our support staff as well. The next is the operations fund. Again, that's just a snippet of the total for the year. And on the next page of that, you can see the same breakdown for the operations fund. We're at 30.58% for salary and benefits. That covers a lot of your central office staff, your maintenance, your environmental services, and more of the operational side. So obviously too, because we do have some service contracts, that's why our service line is higher out of the operations fund. And the next slide is just the summary between those two accounts. And it just shows you in totality where all of those are between the operations and the education account. The next slide is that same summary that shows you overall we're at 76% salary and benefits to our overall expenses in 2023.
How does that compare to other corporations?
That's pretty standard. I will tell you our classroom expenditure, our amount of percentage to the classroom, direct classroom, is considerably high in comparison. Mm-hmm.
I've consistently heard that.
Yes.
Since being on the board. But okay, thank you.
Yes. The next is just a different way to look at it, just to show you what percentage of the pie it is, but it's just the same information in a different manner. On the next slide is a 5-year analysis. So what you have in the lighter shade of red is the certified budget from 2020 through 2024. And then highlighted in the deeper red are the actual expenditures. You can see the gray, it's a trend line just to show you what just a statistical measure of expenses looking forward to that 2024 year where we would be. So what you can see by this, and this is just the education fund, is we are decreasing that annual budget. What we're trying to do is to bridge the gap between what's actual expenses to what's budgeted expenses. That may mean you may see now more additional appropriations, but that's going to be, that's more of a planned way of saying, if we're going to utilize cash balance reserve, this is a balanced budget based off of actual expected revenue. So if we have a need for cash balance, that'll come to you in the form of an additional appropriation now.
So it's more forward thinking than reactive.
It's more of we're utilizing actual trend data from received revenue to project our actual expenses. So if we receive more money, like we are for the NESP, we're going to come in and say, hey, we're going to need to do an additional appropriation for those funds now because we're expensing those out of them instead of just over budgeting some of those resources.
Got it. Okay.
And it also gives greater control at the board level of those expenditures because we're not budgeting every piece of revenue plus cash balance, we're budgeting what's projected to actually be spent.
for that year.
And that's more and this is much more in line with other government units finances.
Thank you. The next is the operations fund. So again, we're just looking to bridge that gap a little bit to actual expenditures. So you can we actually are hitting that trend line where we're moving our budget for this year. You can see that budget line goes down at the top, that top line, because we are removing some of that budget because we're not going to try to budget cash balance. We're trying to budget actual revenue received. And so we're moving that line down, but you can see it's still in line with what our trend line is showing. So again, if we have a project, you're going to hear from us because we're just going to do an additional appropriation, but the board will know and have transparent insight to knowing that you're utilizing cash balance then. The next is, I thought it was important again, just because we do have a large amount of encumbrances that are outstanding. Trey, great job keeping up with this, by the way. But the star is just reflectant of adding in that $3.8 million of encumbrance carry forward from 23 year end to 24 year open.
But much of that is going to be pulled from the debt service.
I don't know if I would say. I would say approximately there'd be about $1 million of it at the most, because I know that there's $486,000 for turf and possibly about $350 for some of the other items that Karen just mentioned. Mm-hmm. On the next is just a budget comparison for 2021 to 2024. That was also linked in my highlights and happenings, but basically that's just going to show you budgeted revenue, budgeted expense compared to actual received revenue and actual received expenditures. So it's going to show you how we're just kind of pushing that ceiling and that floor together a little bit. On the next slide is the education fund, operation fund transfers. So that first slide is just what you see every month now in that consent item for the transfers. I'll continue to do that. I'll probably also throw in a fund line chart so you can see what that looks like. So the 2024 is, again, some of the information you've already had, but I wanted it to be in one packet for you. So if you wanted to grab it, you had it in one location. But that's what we're looking to implement as we move into 2024 and what we utilized for our budget. Our projected budget for 24 for the for the operations fund, but we're also planning on that net loss from the operations fund since it comes out as an expense. Moving on, I thought it was important knowing what else is on the agenda later is to go ahead and show you. You've seen some of these slides through the budget presentation back in September. But this is just the current tax rate comparisons in Wayne County. That solid red line at the top is the average total rate for Wayne County. Next slide. And one more. There we go. The bottom dotted red line is the average debt service rate for Wayne County. On the far right are R2. The unit total is in blue. So you can see we are well below that solid red line on that blue, and then that dashed line, the orange, that represents the orange bar, and we are well below that average too. The next slide is that same comparison for our North Central Conference, and you can see we're on the far right of that as well, that solid blue unit total is well below that solid red dashed line, and then that orange bar, which is just our debt service, is well below that bottom dashed red line, which is the average debt service for the NCC conference. The next are just a few key takeaways that I think it's important to note as we close 23 and open 24. In 2022 and 2023, we did utilize cash balance for projects. I think that was, in talking to Karen, I think that was very intentional because we were carrying a high amount of cash reserve, and there are some highly pressing needs in our district, throughout our district. So we did utilize cash balance. The ESSER 2 grant has been completed and we have fully received all those funds. And I just sat here and high-fived with Mrs. Markward because we just received the other end of our ARP funds. So the ESSER 3 grant, as Karen mentioned, is going to be completed. It has to be encumbered by September 30th of 24 and then expensed out by December 15th. So that is lingering and we continue to implement and forward think that the conclusion of that grant. We have started to move over as we can and budget within the education fund what we can. And then we've also looked at what we're going to have to absorb off as well as those funds are completed. Let's see, there is significant costly facility needs ahead of us. You've been presented, I think, a pretty comprehensive plan of what is in front of us, which is why we have been talking about utilizing some of our debt capacity. It is going to be a multi-year fix. It can't be done in just 2024, but we're going to continue to have a short-term plan and a long-term plan that we will keep revising and bringing in front of you. We're going to continue to look to increase available resources by raising our debt service rate to offset the operations fund to keep more state tuition grant in the education fund. Again, that does not mean that we are in any way. We are financially very stable. What we are trying to do is to maximize our resources because as you can see, we are well behind in the available resources that are coming into our school in comparison to other schools throughout the state. In fact, I think we're last. So we've been able to do as much as we can with what we've been receiving, but we can do so much more and really begin to move that dial by trying to really bring in and diversify some of our resources available. The next slide, key takeaways from the 24 budget. I'm just going to kind of summarize or kind of glaze over these next few slides. You've seen them before, but I thought they were important. This is a good resource tool for you if you want to have on you as you go out in the community or as you talk about the debt issuance or the budget and some of the changes that we are implementing. So you've seen these before, so I'm not going to go into them into much detail. But again, some of the options to utilize all the tools in our tool belt that we began to implement already is we did start with the transportation excess levy appeal. As you know, that was awarded. Our levy did increase that amount. We are looking to offset operations fund to other funding sources to decrease the transfer percentage, which you can see we're looking to decrease from 14.76% to 13.5% for this coming calendar year. Moving to the next slide, we're looking to maximize the operation fund dollars. You've heard that a lot. There's multiple ways to do that. The one that we are looking to do currently is the transportation levy appeal. And then on the next slide, we're looking to increase our debt operating tax rate and levy. If you move forward a couple there, Trey, one more, maybe one more. This is just, again, what our overview of our debt looks like. This is our current debt. And as we go to talk later in the agenda about our debt issuance project, you'll see those estimates based off of funding amounts that you can approve. This is just a current snapshot of what our current debt looks like and where it's set to expire. We do have all of our debt looking to expire here in a few coming years. The next two slides were just what was provided to us by Stifel. The first one was nearby school tax rates. You can see it's in line with the slides that I had in my packet. This shows us of the nearby school, and this is our debt service tax rate. Where on the next slide is, I'm sorry, the first one was the total tax rate. The second one was the debt service alone rate. And you can see we're significantly behind on both of those, which just means, it doesn't mean that have any concern. What it means is there's additional resources that we can utilize for our wide span facilities that we have here. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
I would love to entertain a motion to accept the report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
President Walton, I think the motion was to accept the report.
Yes.
Very well spoken. Yeah, I don't want you to get involved in approving it
No.
because the decision making
Accepting.
is beyond the realm of this body.
Correct. All those in favor state, or I'm sorry, any comments or questions before I jump ahead?
Appreciate Jamie and her
A lot of work goes
time
into
and
this.
efforts in compiling that in the midst of the January
Joy. Change the word joy. Delights.
All right. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Next, I would love to entertain a motion to close the Board of Finance meeting and reconvene as the Board of School Trustees.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Member Zaleski, second by Member Stoltz. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We are now back in our regular meeting. Next up is policy review. 9.1, I'm not sorry, 9.01, the second reading of batch.
There were a whole bunch of all of us read through these, and there were many of these, most of these policies that are just carryover from the old. So putting it in Neola's standard language. And it would move that we approve all policies except those that we had questions on. And should we include that document as part of the minutes of the ones we had comments and questions, proposed policies with questions and comments, to exclude those from that one?
That looks like it's in our spreadsheet then, right? So it's not here because we still have our.
It is.
Oh, it is? Yeah. Oh, let's see now.
So we have two separate documents that Mr. Mops graciously prepared for us. So one is at the top, you see it says proposed policies with questions and comments. And then one packet that says no questions or comments. So I think Pete's motion was to approve the one that says no questions and comments. And then we'll continue reviewing and bring for an additional reading the ones that we did have additional review and comments, if it's to your pleasing.
Correct.
So when was that last updated? I mean, like.
We did that today.
Today.
Right, but like, did anyone have questions and comments at 4:55 and maybe they didn't get on here? You see what I mean?
It was, he gave it to me at the end of the day, I would say about 3.
Okay.
But it was taken from
The spreadsheet.
these, yeah.
Okay.
So
I guess my question would be to the board, did anyone have questions or comments past that when it has been reflected?
I'm impressed. This took some time.
Took a lot of time.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
we were just trying to
Yeah,
take
we had
all
a
of
lot
the
of questions.
suggestions.
This
Yeah.
is right. All the ones. These are all the ones we.
The ones that still had ongoing,
But,
we did reserve those off.
The spreadsheet that everybody was able to contribute to was a great resource. It was great to see everybody else's comments and questions on some of it. A lot of times we share the same concerns.
And kudos to the board on the amount of work. Like we could literally see you guys in looking and reviewing and
I got lost.
asking questions. So I just want to acknowledge the amount of time that each of you put into that and poured into that as well. So thank you to each of you and to Mr. Mops.
To see that this is in motion. Sometime. in conversation and discussion. As I put it.
Ron, I guess my only question is, do we, a motion to accept those, there, the numbers on the policies don't correspond to old policies. Do we need to do any rescinding of the prior policy, or?
I would think that would be, I would suggest you do that at the end of the entire process.
Okay.
I think to the a simple motion that at that point in time, when you finally finish your review and adoption of the NEO, would be that any policies that heretofore existing that are contradicted by these are repealed to the extent of contradiction.
Okay, so nothing at this point.
I don't think you need to at this point. I'm not really sure where you are.
So my motion.
Okay. Can we just enter this document into
I don't
minutes,
think I
or do I
have
need to read down?
Yeah, did you put a copy there? Here.
Okay.
Just from my understanding, this is our batch one boilerplate. It's not the batch one minimum options.
It is.
There's a few minimal options that nobody had any comments on.
I was looking, I just saw some that weren't on here, but we didn't have any questions or concerns. So I
If
just,
you look, I think he categorized them separately, and I just,
for
No
example,
options on page 3.
it's on page 2.
oh, okay. I see it now. Yep. So it's both.
So those are the only ones that,
Perfect.
yes.
That looks great.
So I put a few questions in general. So first of all, a lot of these have guidelines that are they're, administrative guidelines that Dr. Wright's supposed to be writing, that aren't currently, I mean, are we making a whole bunch of work for you? So that's question number 1.
No. Do you want me to answer that?
As long as, no, yes, absolutely.
Sounds like we're creating one for change.
Right, Dr. Wright.
They also come in and help suggest any administrative guideline review as well. And then they will also come in and help us with realigning any administrative guideline number to the corresponding new policy number.
Okay.
So that'll be a phase as well. So no to that, but it will be ongoing, but it won't be an extreme amount because they will come in and aid with that as well.
And then to your question.
They being Neola.
And of what we've also presented, and of what we've come to understand as Professor Johnson, Superintendent Johnson, and Dr. Johnson, last presented to us all with regard to the administrative. The beauty with this is that we have the opportunity to always go back, review, amend, as we, as a cabinet, as our central office leadership team, building level leaders, as we continue to, in the field, practice, put in practice these policies. Anytime we ever have to come back and recommend or readdress particular policies, those options, along with the administrative guidelines.
Okay. So the second thing, and this is probably just a me thing, not understanding. Okay, so it seemed like we had a lot of duplicate policies that were under, one section, like administrative or administration, for instance, and then maybe again under professional staff. What could you explain why we have?
Yeah.
Why would we not just have? Is it for people to be able to find that more readily?
That's
word for
one.
word, verbatim, same policy, but a different number. Yeah. Okay.
That's typical of Neola, and I think it's a good practice only because it allows policies that could be impacted by the relationship with the exclusive representative to be really set aside and isolated. But you'll see similarities in all of them because a lot of them are basically either regulatorily mandated or what have you. But that's been their practice. It can be confusing, but if you understand that they're categorizing classifieds, perhaps, but certainly certificated because of the collective bargaining process.
Okay. So it's kind of an organizational thing, though. Like, okay, we're organizing them this way.
Based off of certified and classified is the main differential. And a lot of that's because it's contractual, non-contractual.
Okay. All right.
So there's many that refer to both, which are your duplicates, but there'll be certainly some that are differential based off if you're certified or non-certified.
Okay.
I'm assuming the administrative guidelines, a lot of them will be very similar to what we currently have. It'll be just kind of just tweaking the numbers.
That is correct.
Similar to the policy.
That is correct.
So moving forward, I'm assuming that you'll remove the ones from our spreadsheet that are approved. And then how do you want us, like some of the ones that were answered questions, like the oath of office, for example, I can go back and change my question to now an okay.
Right.
And is that what you want us, is that what our next step is? Or, and then when do we discuss the ones that we want to review? What's the next step, I guess?
So I think what our plan is to go ahead and have another first reading batch at our work session in February. And then, so we'll start this process all over again. But then, no, it'll be smaller. This is the big one, mainly because they were so many were either identical or very non-substantive changes. The next one does require more work and review of us to even bring a recommendation. So it's going to slow down because of our available time too. But then it's also our plan to bring for third reading then anything that wasn't passed this evening. So we'll just kind of continue this. So if it looks like all questions were answered or we were able to make sure that it looks like it's ready to be brought for third reading, we'll do that. We'll keep with this same plan though of having the differential. So if there's still maybe a couple lingering questions for two of them, we'll probably handle it just on the same manner for the third reading for this batch, if that's acceptable.
So I should go back and change the ones to okay.
Yeah.
That's our next step is to look through.
Just so we know that you don't have,
that
basically okay may be meaning that there's no further questions
right,
from
no
you.
further questions.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not saying that, you know, if we decide at some point in the future, hey, let's pull policy. You know,
Absolutely.
127.
Just as we had done prior to the process.
Right.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and, you know, the third reading, say, you know what, this is the same. Well, let's go ahead and get it adopted. You can certainly do that. And then we can always asterisk those that we want to pour more time into later also. So there is always that option.
Do we have an actual, I should know this, I haven't been here that long, an employee handbook? Because I did notice like just some of them, you know, references other things, but I think the board could have an overall full lot like benefits. Like,
Yeah.
And that benefits, severance, there were some things in here that, you know, we don't, I mean, yes, we need a policy for, but is it turned into more of an overarching, please reference the benefits package? Like I just saw some, because then it gets confusing, I think, is where do I look? Is it here? Are those the same things if we're not referencing those? But I didn't know if that's what you guys would prefer to do, is have some of those things just in employee handbooks.
Yes.
And the overall like higher level. Okay.
Yes.
And isn't that awesome?
Just because it's always something that we try to do. It should be standard practice.
Yeah.
To review the handbook.
On these, and I was like,
Right.
That doesn't really belong
It's
there.
kind of the same of having a master contract with our education association. You know, there's not everything mentioned in policy because it's also it's mentioned. So that's one of our key go-tos. You know, your first stop is policy, administrative guideline, master contract, handbook.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it possible to have like a hot link embedded that automatically can take you there? Is that something
to the handbook?
Yeah, or whatever it's referencing in the policy, so you wouldn't have to separately.
We do have it hot linked on our website.
Okay.
I can probably, we could also probably work though to create it as an attachment within, you know how we have all of our forms listed in Board Docs? We could probably put it as an attachment there as well.
Well, again, I'm not wanting to make.
No, I think that's a good,
It's like, or even
a good
highlight different
recommendation.
color, and I could, you know, I'd be okay with just being like, oh, I can go reference that if I need to.
Those are all 20 of my questions.
Thank you. They were good ones.
Okay. So,
We have a motion on the table.
well, it's
Could you
not,
clean it up, though? I
it's
didn't
kind
like-
of gray. So the
Yeah.
motion should be, to move forward the list of boilerplates that have no questions or comments.
boilerplates and minimal options
Oh, yes.
with no questions or comments. To approve those.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by member Zaleski, second by member Stevens. Motion is to move forward the boilerplate, no questions or comments, and the minimal options. And this document will be in the minutes. Okay. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, or all those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0.
Would it be appropriate to, of the spreadsheet that we're working off of, to pull kind of the PDF screenshot of that and put that into the minutes for the full transparency of our process? As so the questions that we have are part of the minutes, and our complete process is transparent. I'm asking would that be appropriate?
I believe so. And again, we'll be,
It'll be very transparent.
yes.
I think the problem with that is that this is a working document, so maybe I go in and
But
change
if they pull a PDF of it, that's the current state of it
right now.
as
And I think
today's
that
date.
it has a current reflection of it.
Good.
So I think that we can just adhere what we have as a part of the minutes at this point then.
It would be a live.
Right.
Yeah,
It
okay,
would not
got
be
it.
the live.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the live document, it would be the PDF kind of screenshot of it. And then I think we can do that ongoing as we move through, so that the process can be seen all the way through the minutes.
Well, I just would like to also extend my appreciation. And then I know our central office team and our building level leaders have already made reference to that systemic alignment. And this is what it feels like. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. This is what it looks like. And you all are engaged in it head first. And we appreciate you all for it. This is great.
So would it stand to reason that we need to then move to third reading, I guess, any of these policies that we have additional questions?
Does that go to an automatic third reading, Ron, if we bring it back, or do they need a motion?
That's whatever the board wishes it to do, because our existing policy that will eventually go away is that there's only 2 readings, for a fact. But I think we talked about it when we had the lady and the folks here from Neola. I just think it's important. Somebody, it sounds like it's going to be burdens on Stacy to keep track of where you are in the various phases. And there are still some policies, a policy at least I'm concerned about, that we don't have in place, that is pretty important that we get in place ASAP. We should have had it at the first of the year. We don't have it. And that's on the instructional materials and the ability.
His plan is to have that first reading for the work session.
Okay.
I believe, and I think he was obviously going to share the current draft and its state with Mr. Cross ahead of that.
Just to follow up Mr. Cross's comments, it's very seldom. I don't know if I've ever heard of a third reading. Normally, it's just move from first reading to second reading and it passes. With your thought, Pete, in regards to having this available and the transparency, it lets the public know the deliberation that went into approving these, not, to give the appearance that there were policies that were slid under just slid past without deliberation or consideration. And if it's available, online that somebody can look at, they can see that, this effort was put into approving that, or moving it from first to second reading.
Also, lets you see the time and effort involved that we put in. All right.
So we do or don't need to do.
Are we moving this to third reading or not?
I personally would like to, I like the idea of having
I think this doesn't get moved. This stays as first reading, right?
I think you can move the ones that were not just adopted on second reading, those that were presented today for second reading that weren't approved and adopted,
Should we vote to
to
table?
bring back to table for a third reading. And to your liking, you could just, so move that.
All right, well, I will make that motion that, all those that were not passed just a minute ago, that we still need reviewed.
What's that?
Can I interrupt you, Mama?
Go ahead, you can interrupt me, Mr. Stevens.
Sorry. Parliamentarian. We have a motion, a second on the floor. You're about to make another motion? We don't.
No, we
did.
already voted.
We voted.
Yes.
That's okay.
This is all overwhelming.
There's a lot of papers floating.
Nicole, NS, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, so I move that we move to third reading, the policies that are still needing review.
Second.
Hold on a second. Move to the table.
No, I'm saying move to third reading. Yeah, that's how I worded
The
it.
proposed policies or questions and comments.
We just including that document in the minutes.
I'll let you make that motion.
Well,
We'll have
it's
like.
not- it's- no, it's fine.
Good idea. I'm sure it's used.
What is your motion?
To move to third reading. Proposed for these that still need review.
Yeah.
These are good.
Yeah, these are.
Okay. So the motion is to move to third reading, proposed policies with questions and comments. And that includes the minutes also.
There's my confusion, I'm sorry.
Okay. And a motion by Nicole Stoltz,
Second, Ms. Brockman.
second by Ms. Brenton. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Is the third reading go to whatever our next meeting is?
Whenever we
Do it,
want.
essentially.
It's actually already on the spreadsheet. Stacy put together January 10, first reading, January 24.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then February 14 is what he has down as kind of like the.
Okay.
So I guess it was already in my mind that we're probably gonna end up with 3. So I think that's what I've been thinking.
If we're ready for it, or if we're ready.
If we're ready, yeah. And yeah. When they were talking from Neola, it sounded like you can do this indefinitely. So
Which we do.
we don't want to do that.
Okay, all those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Now, on to 10.01 and other discussions, the debt issue.
President Ward and trustees, what we would like to do is provide you all the opportunity to discuss the conversation that we had during our last work session regarding what has been presented. And we stand ready to answer any and all further questions, as well as receive any and all further guidance from you all as to what the will of the board will be for what's been presented. I know that Mrs. Scalf, along with Mrs. Bolzer, have some other potential materials to pass out if necessary to help aid and guide and understand, as well as some things you already received.
I know last time we were together, we talked about the 15 and 15 option. Could you explain that maybe in a public setting?
So what you have in front of you too here is the financing options that were presented over the last couple of meetings. The tax base analysis for the property tax revenue projections that was presented in depth at the last meeting. Then also we did update a timetable based off of the question that Mrs. Brunton just alluded to. So what we did when we talked was with issuing such either simultaneous projects or back-to-back projects, if you will, it opens us up. It opens the concern from a non-controlled project standpoint. So what we, after discussing it with Mr. Cross and Jane Herndon from Ice Miller, who's our bond counsel, if that is the option, that the board would like to take, we felt like it would be best practice between all of us to make sure that we're not having to make sure that there wasn't a continuation of a project, or we're not overexpending from a project amount or a location amount, to go ahead and move it from a non-controlled project to a controlled project that's subject to petition remonstrance. We've done that in the past successfully. So what we have provided to you here is there is a matrix that has a $20 million debt issuance. What we found was, because of the high need, it was hard to start striking to get it to 15. We got it to 17.5. And as you can go back and see in that property tax analysis, very slim amount of any differential that would happen between a 15 to a 17.5, or from then a 17.5 to a 20. So we did go ahead and provide the 17.5 million and 20 million planning worksheet and project list. And I know Karen has a lot more information or can answer questions on that, but we did want to make sure the financing options available for both. Then what we would have to do is, we don't have any schematics or plans yet for a Hibbard standalone, because it's my understanding it would be a standalone. It would be no fear, though, from saying, hey, we can go ahead and move this one forward in a couple months. Then, as we get some plans and finalization on some other pieces that would pour into that issuance, then we can issue another one and start that project while simultaneously or delayed from the onset of this one.
What we can't appear to be doing is splitting them, even though we're now accepting the fact that we're going to probably not, the silos, if you recall, that we had, and having to stay around that 6.3 limit without really good numbers to work from was problematic. So I think we all decided that the safest thing to do, to give the board more flexibility within whatever the projects you end up allocating to that first go around, would be to make it a controlled, subject to petition remonstrance. That'll just give you, if the bids come in, and they probably will higher than we think, that'll give a lot more flexibility to move monies within the various projects. Recognizing that the standalone then is in fact a standalone, and so there will not be any issue tainting the first bond issue by saying that, well, you got similar work you're doing in the second one, and you're trying to avoid a referendum issue. Well, we're not. So it's a calculated risk, but it's a time factor, and I think we've got the time, and I think I would agree with Jamie that it's probably the most transparent way to handle this going forward from the taxpayer's point of view.
And I believe you pointed out that we can add, or do the debt issuance for more than what we end up needing, so to speak, or end up spending, but we cannot do less than to increase it.
Yeah, so tonight what we would need is basically, I think by just consensus, a direction to move this issuance forward, so we can go ahead and publicize the notice and start to try to define the project in that notice.
We
and
need to
the
start to
ceiling.
try to define that
Yeah.
notice very quickly, because we're going to have
the
1028 hearings
Yeah.
on each element of the projects.
Yeah.
And
So that's why I think what we went ahead and provided, just because it's usually easier to have something in front of you. We gave you the 20 million debt issuance matrix, if you will, still, and kept it in that same format. Then the project listing from that, and then the 17.5 if it was preference. Like I said, it was a lot harder once we started going in trying to say it. But I thought here from the board in that conversation, it was like a varying amount. So we did provide a 17.5 planning worksheet and project listing that coincided for those. And it has those project lists, which we're here to answer any questions. And Karen, I think, it looks like a lot of information to give you too.
So I'll just roll. So I had been thinking since last meeting, a couple of questions that are very big questions came up. And the first was, what is a facility plan? How do you build it? And then the other was, what are we missing? So I went ahead and I had been, thinking from my end of things. I spoke with Mr. McCurdy from his end of things, just so that we could kind of coordinate that brain power, make sure that things made sense, both from different perspectives. And so with that, I worked a packet for you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I created a packet for you with reports that have been passed out to prior boards. A couple of you will already have them. Some of you will not have had any of them. And then I also coordinated the data within those packages into kind of a map of what's been done according to those studies, and then what's yet to be done, so that we can really think about our facilities and you can understand why or how we plan for them the way that we do. So one thing, I gave you a memo that kind of gives you my thought process, and as we look at facilities, due to a number of reasons. We had circuit breaker hit. We had some taxation changes that made it more difficult to obtain money in the operations area for capital funding. We had stagnant assessed values for a long time. We had a lot of things in our area that made it really difficult, that we haven't been able to do whole complete projects, or we haven't been able to think about things in a holistic way. When I came into this role, that was the thing that I saw was, and just knowing that we have only been able to fix, patch, and repair is kind of the term that we sometimes use, for a really long time. And things changed the year before last in legislation when they allowed growth quotient to become a part of the operations fund, because you weren't able to grow unless you had assessed value growth. Now we do get a little growth from growth quotient, so we should see some changes year to year, hopefully in a positive way. Growth quotient can go negative, so you just be aware of that. But being able to monitor and budget and make sure that we can do the best that we can with the resources that we have. And then mapping strategically for debt issuances, things that we can do to maximize those resources that are available to us. The one thing to note is this debt issuance is really a jumping off point for us. It is not a solve it all. It is not, in fact, a solve anything big. It is a get some things done that we've needed to get done, catch some stuff up, and then we look at 28, 29, whatever that is, very intentionally. Pivot is a very intentional move, because the money that it's going to take to repair is within the range of what it would be to build anew. So when we are looking at facilities in general, my approach to planning, and I've already talked with Mr. McCurdy about this, I think he wholly agrees, because he has a lot of opinions on this as well. But we really look holistically at our systems, at our buildings. Our buildings become a total unit. And when we start a project, what is our best move to finish the project? You will see within your packet, there is a couple of studies done. One was in 2018. The numbers in that financially were pre-COVID, so the market has changed a lot. We do see a change and a swing of about 40 to 50% in costs now that are higher than they were at the time of that study. So that's something just to keep in mind. The CMTA studies, that is how we originated the end plan of the high school mechanical modernization project. So we did parts of those with the intention that we continue to phase that as funds were allowing to finish the job. And so there is still a lot to do at the high school. There is a lot to do in all of our buildings. But as we look and plan and approach, I want to think about it in a way that is a whole package. So as we used to do a long time ago, when we took out When we took out big debt, it was for total renovation. And then you would pay it back and you would do another total renovation. That may or may not be our approach. Maybe it's that systematically we want to do something as a whole package, but it will at least complete things. So some of what you see in this debt issuance is completing things. Example, Dennis. Dennis completes the HVAC piece of that really has to be done and completed. There are things in there that will just make some things better. Asphalt is one. That's just the tip of a very large iceberg, but we need to get started. So those are things, some of it's pretty, some of it's not. In debt issuance, you always have that. You have to balance it. But I wanted you guys to see and to know how we plan, what it is that we work through and talk through and think through and look at on a daily basis. These are there's a couple of spreadsheets in here. They're very fluid spreadsheets. So the roofing, you have the entire district-wide roof information. You have everything I use when I know what roof we're going to do next. However, one thing that changes this is a roof that leaks all the time. So that kind of changes your time. Yeah, high school and test right now. So you will see, like, we have a couple of roofs that maybe aren't the largest on this list, but they're our most problematic. We also have the color-coded chart toward the back. This is an analysis of all of these reports and what's been done to date. And then what we either have on slate to do or what we need to do or need to think about. So those are things just for your reference. Before we get further down the road, I just wanted to make sure you had it at your fingertips. There's nothing more unpleasant than hearing that you don't plan when every day of your life is nothing but a big plan. And so I just wanted to make sure that you had that to know where we get our information and how we do it. I will note that coming into this position, there are things we can do better and we need to do better. And that has been something that I've been working on one day at a time. There are analysis lists that could make things easier for us in the facility department to know and recognize very quickly what's where and things how to do that. There are ways we can write specifications in order to make things work the best for us with maintenance and time efficiencies and funding. We are going to be striving for that in these next years. That is something that is super important as we look ahead. Our maintenance crew has limited time, limited number of hands, and limited resources. And everything we can do to make that the most impactful work possible in an efficient way is the way we need to do it. So that's kind of my charge as I've looked at how this works, where we're at. But I did want to offer that to you, especially those of you that haven't been on the board long. This does help you. It helps you understand what we're looking at in certain areas. There is a draft of a plumbing study that LWC have been working on, and it has not been completely finished yet, but I wanted you to know that it's in process. The other thing is that there was discussion on an electrical study at the high school as well to know what we're at there, where that is. I would love to have a full study for each of our facilities so that we know what each building needs or has so that we can very intentionally move the dial forward. I want our facilities to draw kids to them. I want families to come here because it's a great place to walk into and be current. Our facilities do look very dated. That's reality. They are very nice and they are very well kept, but they are dated. And so knowing that we are an educational facility that is in a constant state of change, I think that it's important that we can solidify some of these systematic things that are behind the scenes and that run the machine so that we can do some of those things that kind of show us off. So that's kind of just where we're at on that. I'll open it for questions, and then we can talk through anything at that point you may want to talk through.
In addition to that, Mrs. Gow, Mr. Bolzer, as we have met, are there particular questions that we want polls so as to receive guidance and also receive direction?
I think from my standpoint, as we prepare for the next step, we have to have a project hearing. That 1028 hearing that Ron is talking about, we have to really define the amount that we're comfortable with and the plan for projects. And this is the type of debt that we don't have a lot of movement in per se, once we set it. And so that's something that I know that Mrs. Bolzer needs the amount so that she can plan how that will work. I need to know what projects are an absolute no or are an absolute yes. Or if there's anything else we may have missed in conversation, because we've heard some things, we've put some on the list. That's why you see some changes. We listened to you last time. Just a few things that we wrapped into some areas that were like areas. And so that for me, that's kind of what I need out of tonight's conversation so that we can move forward with the right information as we move into a hearing.
I guess the question I'd pose is kind of the same I did last time about Baxter. Like, what is the future of Baxter? And I think that's a broader conversation and picture, but the playground there is the same amount of money as it is for Star and Vale. And I know the number of students is vastly different. And every student is worthy of having a playground, but also I just know that it's a transition school with a handful of students. So I just 200,000. I just still question, I guess. I mean, is program going to stay there? I mean, I just need to know.
And one of the, I think, positives of moving from a controlled project to a non-controlled project is that also does allow, so it buckets that money to playground. However, as we wrap in some of the other studies that we're also doing between Mrs. Stouth and Mr. Fowler and our cabinet team, as we get some of those results in the next couple months, as this process moves forward, this does allow us to have some of that control of flexibility to not worry that we're going to go over that threshold that Mr. Cross mentioned that would make us really nervous. He and our legal team very nervous, our other legal team, I should say, very nervous. So as we get those results, we can then flush that money if it's, hey, this playground, now it needs to look like this because this is the future. Or it can then go to
HVAC if it comes in high.
HVAC then.
Okay.
It can stay at Baxter, but maybe the cost of HVAC bids will come in high and that could help cover it.
Okay.
And we don't have to worry about then that HVAC project budget being over like we would before.
So you're proposing that either, I think it's 18 or 20. Is that right?
17.5.
Okay, sorry. Should have round, just $500,000. 17.5 and 20 with no Hibbard, touching not Hibbard at all. And then the plan is in how much time then too? I guess I want to know the time period.
Okay.
Because I'm
So,
like gung-ho about getting this Hibbard thing going.
I will tell you, I am gung-ho, but I want to be smart about it too so that we do it right.
Right.
So what I know is that just the planning part is going to take us a little bit. We want to be able to draw things up. We want to get some modeling done. We want to be able to provide some conversation now that this is an option, because before we were just in repair mode and then a lab. And so knowing that we have some opportunity for conversation that is a little different and a lot exciting, then it provides us an opportunity to get that done. I would say that the planning portion, I know that Mr. McCurdy would have a lot of work to do as well, because that modeling, I mean, that's full drawings. That's, seeing what we can do with how much we want to spend and giving options that make sense, as well as solving additional things that we might want to solve while we're doing this. Example, maybe we want 2 gyms, not just one. Maybe we don't, maybe it isn't a cafeteria facility. Maybe it's a lab, a true lab that, it works like a field trip and we bring sack lunches. We have options we have to talk through. And at that time, what would happen, or it looks like a school. I mean, there's lots of things we can talk through, but I would say it's going to take us at least 9 months to a year to flush that out and get it done well. And then
we can talk issuing debt when we know what that budget truly looks like based on those models. And then and the other thing we have to realize is we need builders. And with ESSER this year, and the work that then has either been delayed because of all this other work, I think 2 years is a reasonable amount of time to be able to plan and design for year one, bid and spec and work through any demo needed, any changes needed to the landscape. In year two, we take debt, we work through, and then we move. So that we can be up and running, year 2.5 or 3, depending on the market. And that's where it's just, we are already, I will say, behind for summer work right now because it's the normal time when everybody's bidding. So this year really is out. Next year we'll want to have good designs ready, and then that gives us the ability to map that debt plan, and then we'll be ready to run. So I really think, a year and a half and year two, we're starting to move as far as actual movement that is, ground and stuff like that is reasonable.
Jamie, does the board have this?
Yes, and that is the new timeline is included in your board pack and available for.
I guess I have some reservations about being able to meet it. Even if a general definition of projects, this has us publishing the notice of the project hearings, and we're talking about projects, not project, February 2nd, and it's usually at least a week. I can impose a little bit on the paper, but a week would be having it ready tomorrow. And I'm not sure, I don't want you to feel rushed in identifying the projects. And there's so much air, if you will, in the schedule at the back end that if we need to move that February 14th date back, I don't think that's the end of the world.
I don't think that would be the end of the world if we needed to move.
But I think you need to feel comfortable with what you're including, because I don't want you to get a false sense of security that by going to a controlled project for the silos that we talked about, suddenly you've got more money to deal with. I mean, you might have a little more if we're talking 15 million versus 17 and a half is where you've landed.
17 and a half, 20, 50, yeah.
But we don't, until we get bids, we won't know anything, and that's where there's a delay built in. We may want to, before we publish notice of intent to execute the lease, we may want to see how the bids come in.
But going back to, I think, Mrs. Stoltz's question that she had at the onset, we can advertise the ceiling, and as the process comes, so if you say a ceiling of 20 or 17, then that does allow a little bit of flexibility as those come in, to be able to, even if we set a ceiling of 20 million with the ideal goal of 17.5 million, that does give us some flexibility as those projects come in. And to be able to define the projects, that's why we did provide you that list to see if there was anything of major movements on there, so that we can define that, so we can go ahead and get that notice published. But then also, to Mrs. Scout's point, if we have that ideal pinpoint or that ceiling by consensus this evening, that then allows me to have understanding, because trying to balance the amounts too that I'm trying to keep over into that education fund, and some of that is hindering on what available funds that we have to move from operations over into debt service. So I think that would be helpful if we had that consensus, and then I think it was just to move forward. If there is concern on being able to publish by this, I don't see a concern with it.
It's not my concern. It's going to be bond counsel's concern as to how comfortable they'll be with the very general project descriptions. We're going to have to, between the time we advertise and the time we have the first hearing, there'll have to be 2 hearings now, because this would be a controlled project. We have to really hone down what components of the projects are and have pretty good numbers as to what we're going to go to the public with in those 2 preliminary determination hearings.
What happens if we, you know, like the Baxter example, you could maybe not use it for the playground, but you could use it for something else. What happens if, let's say, I don't even want to name school because it's just hypothetical. You know, something happens and we're like, we're not going to utilize that school anymore. So we allocated funds to it.
Can't really do that without some legal work. So
Okay.
you would have to rewrite some things. That's why what Ron's point is and Jamie's point is so vital.
Right.
Because what you have on the list are things that need to be done. So to say we aren't going to do them at a school.
I'm just saying if we don't, let's say
right.
we don't study that there aren't even kids at the school anymore.
Right.
Like something.
Right. If it was big drastic, something like that, you have legal measures that you can rewrite. Okay. It's just not always as easy as it maybe would like to be.
And it's it's more, and that was the one thing I heard from the board last time, and that's why we're moving it to subject to the petition remonstrance for that transparency. But also, if something, to your point, happens like that, there is space that we can move through that if needed at that point. I have talked to Miss Herndon. I do believe she does have a generalized concept based off of these recommendations, but if it goes too far off of this, to Ron's point, we may look to have to delay this. That's a little concerning because the time schedule is built to be able to receive those funds ahead of probably when Karen is wanting that work to really kick off and begin. There is some flexibility, as we mentioned, because we have the option to reimburse ourselves. And, you know, from the time we kick it off, most of the people don't need paid right away, but we want to be able to time those payments to make sure that we can quickly pay our vendors.
Karen, the difference between the 2.5 million, is that fencing? Is that right? Between the two?
Actually, if you pull up the 17.5, we tried to color code.
Is that the purple?
It's supposed to be red, green, and yellow. So the reddish, the one that's closest to the reddish color, are the ones that we
put to zero.
They're
all fencing
from the other.
Okay. And is that the only difference, or what's the other code?
The other part, I think we moved asphalt at the high school to zero because we were able to then lump a large sum of asphalt district wide to 3 million.
Oh, I see.
We also removed anything allocated to Hibbard from hearing that discussion because, to your point, if as we look to modify the building scope of that, we moved that money from Hibbard then as well. So those are, and then also Fairview, the tower, you see it's yellow. That's just because the amount changed. It's still there. That was originally 700,000, but we're looking to split that, I think, between operations and the debt.
Yeah, we had originally had the HVAC portion and, the facade and the tower roofing in one package of 700. In order to do some other things, we left the part that was the facade piece, which we advertised tonight, in operations, and then the remainder was here. And that's one thing Jamie alluded to it earlier. You will still have an operations budget with projects in it. You just will not have all the things in it. This is not, like I said, I think that the term we're looking at is maybe 15 years. So when you think about that, it's not these projects really would need to be done within the first 3 to 5 anyway. So it's not going to change a huge amount of the makeup. It just helps a little bit to offset that.
And so how necessary, when I'm looking at the two, I guess you convinced me, do we need the fencing? Is it okay to leave it out? Do we need the asphalt?
I will say that the fencing and the asphalt they have to go somewhere because we have to do some work on it.
Right.
So we have backstops that we have got to paint and repair. They make a drastic difference aesthetically when you're looking, and driving past our buildings. Mm-hmm. They are at the lifespan where they have got to minimally be stretched and painted, a lot of them. We've got McBride. The fencing at McBride is going to be quite a lot if we want to update that and make it look a little bit better. The high school fencing hasn't been done since, I think that it was done in my first or second year. So we're looking at least 10 years, if not more like 12.
And I see that's on both of them, so that's staying no matter what.
Yeah,
I
like
guess that-
there are things with that we just need to do. And fencing provides, there's things in our elementaries we have been doing a little bit. We've been enclosing some playgrounds so that we have gates. There's more work on that we need to do a little bit. It's something that we haven't touched for a while.
Right.
Asphalt we haven't touched in a really long while, but we just have got to do it. So
Is, the star fencing, was that ever fenced in that whole area? Okay, great.
yeah, they have a complete fence now.
Yeah.
That was a concern.
The Richmond fencing, or are you talking about what area are you talking about?
Sorry, which the high school?
Or just yeah,
There is a fence all the way around my ball.
that's what I was.
And all around the softball field. It goes all the way around that area.
Right.
So updating some of that,
Okay.
cleaning it up, getting it painted.
Okay.
Perhaps looking at, the entrance point and making that cleaned up just a little bit.
I know years ago on the fencing still, sorry. Well, I know Brad, you've talked about it too. Just some ideas that would cost probably more than 200,000, but would certainly make a beautiful stately.
Correct. And that's something with McBride. I've already thought maybe there are going to be ways that we could coordinate the facilities in a way that maybe makes that something special at both places. I'm looking at grants for things like that as well. McBride is a historic facility, so I'm trying to work through that in order to maybe obtain some grants. We don't own it yet, so I can't do it.
Yeah.
But I do have thoughts about that in the future. But yes, I mean,
But is that something like, talking about brick pillars?
Yeah.
Yeah. Every section.
I mean, it's or even just an entryway.
University.
Yeah. Maybe it's an entryway. Maybe it's not every so often. Maybe it's a really nice entry point into the area. So yes, it is not.
Okay.
It is something on the radar.
Just
Yeah.
And that's
would
what
love to see what options are.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
and maybe allocating that 200 towards something a little more.
That would be great, but there are just some things that we need to do that aren't that.
Pie in the sky.
Agreed. But it's something good to think about for
Of
sure.
that quote unquote pie in the sky. And that's what I think I'm going to ask that Mr. Scout and Mrs. Bosa also bring clarity to this complex issue. But of those pies in the skies, of the conversations that have been ongoing for some time, I think Mrs. Scout alluded to the fact that she was onboarding 13 years ago. Several conversations have been ongoing about addressing aspects to our corporation. And I think that again, in asking that Mrs. Bowles and Mrs. Scout bring a clarifying point, we've received and fielded questions from particular stakeholders concerned that with such debt issuance and such conversation that things are not healthy when it comes to our corporation's fiscal nature or financial nature, which couldn't be further from the truth. And what I would love for Mrs. Bowles or Mrs. Scout to allude to is the rationale as to why we are coming before you all with such proposals and help clarify some of the complexities found within some of what we have before.
No, thank you, because I feel like the board understands that, but the public may not.
Yes, the
Yeah,
public,
so-
what we have fielded, the public is concerned that our finances are not in order, and that couldn't be further from the truth. What this is going to allow us to do is address a lot of those pies in the skies that have been in the sky, a lot of those balloons for some time. And Mrs. Bowles, if you can just allude a little further.
Absolutely. So when looking into our availability of funds, as I presented earlier in the 2023 review, we are in a strong financial stronghold. As far as our cash reserve, we're ahead of the state recommended, we're ahead of all professional recommended thresholds. We were able to pass a very secured and historical master contract. What we're looking to do, because we have very wide spanning facilities and grounds that we have, we have 6 elementary buildings, we have an intermediate, a middle school, a high school, and then 2 program buildings. We have a lot of facilities and grounds. we have had and used the best that we can on the limited resources that we've had available to us. However, in order to move the dial, like what we did with our master contract, we strategically went into that knowing that there were other available resources that we could utilize. So in order to really be able to hone in on and be in a competitive environment, as we're looking at our peers and doing data reviews and analyzing data strongholds, whether it be in student achievement or whatever the data point, when we're looking at those peers statewide, as we should be, it also needs to be looked at what available resources that we have statewide and compared to that statewide analysis. We are very far behind on the available resources that we are providing to meet all of those growing challenges that we are faced with, whether it be grounds and facilities, whether it is a classroom. So what we've done is take a strategic approach to be able to diversify our resources available to be able to move the dial on some of our operational ongoing projects that we have to bring finality to those instead of having them be ongoing. We want to complete those and then move on to the other projects. We strategically wanted to make sure that we passed a historical contract for our teachers because we knew in looking at data points that we only had 76% retainage from one prior school year to 22-23. We knew we wanted to move that dial. We did. We moved it from that mid 70s to over 90 to 94% teacher retainage. We did that strategically by trying to move the available resources that we have. That is all that this is doing, is trying to expand on that. Issuing debt, and I've said this as a analogy. What we can do is leverage our debt today and our buying and purchasing power to impact the school for 20 plus years to come. Our approach right now with our statewide, we are, like I said, the lowest taxing rate in the state of Indiana for our debt. It's like we're waiting to purchase the house until we're retired and we can own it instead of leveraging that debt today for a mortgage and paying that and having that debt paid off when we're ready to retire. That's kind of the analogy, if that makes sense, that I'm looking to use. We're just leveraging today's purchasing power to bring some of these so that our students today can experience all of these wonderful opportunities.
While that metaphor that you used was great, as it was at the master class, for those elementary students who are tuning in.
Yeah.
Concerned with our
I think the two gentlemen in the back have a very high understanding. They can come up here and present.
Ethan and Heidi, they have it. But for our elementary students who are watching, let me ask one basic question. And Mr. Scalf, I know that a few years back we celebrated with this as well, as you have been celebrating, and our corporation has been celebrating for some time. We have a credit rating of an A. We have an A rating.
In a very difficult and economic area. And so it's something that we have worked very hard to hold when it has been not always easy. So yes, we have that. We have cash reserves. A lot of schools don't have cash reserves. We are not on a year to year. This year we intentionally spent cash reserves because we had an insurance claim that afforded us the opportunity to get a floor done that we had been talking about for 3 years. So we intentionally have spent our money and not done it just by happenstance or flippantly. These conversations have been very intentional and very intelligently done.
And what this is going to allow us to do as a corporation is continue to pull down those balloons, those pies in the sky that have been in motion for some time, and actually through action-based leadership, put it into fruition. But financially, we're secure. We're good.
All right. So you're needing to know from us if we're wanting to look at 17.5 or if we're wanting to look at 20, and that would be kind of question number one. What are we thinking?
So to piggyback a little bit and pull from the conversation from last meeting, Mr. Cross, Mr. Curdy, referenced, make sure you know what your goals are or something to that effect for this. And it's maximizing our tax revenue, being able to move our 5 to 10-year projects from operations to debt service, and being able to decrease the transfer from education to operations, and to keep as many of those dollars in education to maximize that those student-facing personnel is really the end goals. I appreciate the conversation about Hibbard, but I think that's a larger conversation on a strategic plan on changing our operation overall.
Well, can I ask one clarifying question on that? Because that will change. We have to do some repairs at Hibbard.
I understand.
And so it could change the trajectory if we aren't going to have that conversation. So we do need to know if
And
that is
also,
a possibility.
Yeah, I feel like the general consensus of the board has been to move forward on a new Hibbard building.
Okay.
Are you saying, yeah, what are you?
I haven't heard that.
Okay. I guess that's what.
Yeah,
I
talked about
think.
it last meeting. I think
Yeah.
I know. From my viewpoint, yeah, we talked about a new Hibbard, but for me, it could also be we move the Hibbard kids somewhere where we can make improvements. Maybe it's extra space at the high school for a few years because I don't want them sort of not getting that lab space, or we have to put money in Hibbard just to
So
keep
I
it
guess
going.
this is
or
just,
like-
I just
yeah.
need to know because the project hearing is going to be super important, and we took Hibbard out of these projects. We will need to do things at Hibbard if it's open the way that it is now, and we plan for the STEAM program or whatever programs live there. I just want to make sure we don't need to put that back in some fashion if we're going to have conversations down the line, because there's things we need to do if we aren't moving things around in the next few years, just to make sure that things are maintained as best they can be. Nothing is emergent.
We didn't intend to include Hibbard though in the project.
The first
one had
we were going to, I think, include it was like 594,000. That's just off the top of the head. So, but that was just to fix some water, reroute water around it.
Yeah.
But
I think it's going to take the board a while to get its head around what it thinks is the conceptual design for the next Hibbard, if you will.
But I do feel like, do we need a backup plan in the next year or two for Hibbard? Because something could go wrong. And we're like, no, we're not putting money in. But also, how can we support those kids? Because
and that is part of the reason too. We budget rainy day is just in case there is a rainy day, that we have the flexibility to fix any emergent items that could arise. I think too, as we're looking to plan, the thought would be to keep Hibbard as it is, to be able to then, I wouldn't think you would relocate it in the exact location with the same exact problems, right?
Right.
So I think, hopefully the best case scenario, you'd have time to then, utilize this current space while you're building or repurposing another space. But I think the important thing is to go ahead, to Ron's point, and move this project forward, and then we can begin to backfill the other as we move this one forward down the line, and come back to say, okay, let's have all this, space utilization, all of those analysis done. We can also couple that with providing some options from what we have heard as the input, because it does sound like that is consideration. But to Karen's point, if the board consensus is no, then we will probably want to include that 600,000 to get us further along with Hibbard than what we maybe are currently thinking from the last discussion.
Well, I'm personally comfortable with moving this project forward, and with the idea that we will be looking at Hibbard then separately. And I guess I'm just wondering, is everyone at that comfortable state of moving this project forward, or or not? Because then if we are, we need to decide 17.5 to 20. So,
I'm comfortable with project list of 20.
okay.
Uh, and they're at that 17.5, if you're going to move the tennis courts, there's going to have to be some fencing. There's going to have to be some asphalt. That, especially the asphalt piece, to fill in. Not that that makes up $2.5 million, but there's a big piece of it there. Definitely for asphalt at RHS. If you're going to move tennis courts, there's going to be.
The other thing I would say with that discussion is, as you look at our debt service fund and what availability that we will have, we do have additional space. You know, obviously we have space to go 30 million. But the timing of when you have to get all those projects done to get them completed to fulfill the obligation. So if you were to bite off 20, and then as those discussions come and we're able to solidify plans for that multi-purpose, for the programming building, we do have additional capacity coming off in 27. So we would be able to strategically backfill that, to Karen's point, after she gets a complete schematics and plan put together, and and begin to have those discussions 9 months, a year, and to be able to move that and strategically finance that front end as that debt falls off then too.
I'm a little nervous about your workload personally. This is a lot to manage,
Yes.
you know, but it's also exciting. So that's kind of.
It's also what's best for our kids too, I think.
Yeah.
So we're
Right.
Yeah, we're a little worried about it too.
I just think we need to be sensitive to the fact we can't put an inordinate demand on at least the local labor market.
That's
I mean, we're facing ARPA monies that have to be spent to get involved with construction. They've got to be completed by the end of 26 for the county. So I mean, there's a lot out there.
There's a lot of variables.
Kevin can attest.
So you kind of mentioned the tennis courts. I know that line item is 700,000, and that's at RHS. Is that sort of just standard what we have to pay to resurface them?
Oh no, that's to do a whole new everything.
Okay.
Oh no,
So-
resurfacing is way cheaper.
Okay.
But we
Okay.
need to
I was
fix
like,
the problem.
that's a lot.
The problem is
Yeah,
just
right direction.
never. Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like the thought of putting money more into the
So does that mean that we have to keep them at RHS, or could
No.
they go to McBride property?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna read your memo because I really want a study done so that we can use things right, because there's only so much room at McBride. I'm gonna be real about that. But we have other areas. Like,
Yeah, I just
it's
wanted to make
not
sure it
just
wasn't like
we have not solidified a space. What I
Okay.
would like to do is truly take the time to get some of those things identified as optional. I think that RHS makes a lot of sense because our students are there, and transporting after school is very difficult for right now for our baseball, sometimes our soccer, and our gymnasts, those that do offsite practice. It's really hard, and it makes it a little unequitable sometimes if parents can't get them there. So I know that if we can do what we can on site, it is always better.
Okay.
And we have room there. If we rework softball over to McBride where there's already fields for it, and we ramp that up and make it what it should be for them, in that program, we have room to do some things.
I did hear from a PE teacher too, and it was great feedback that they utilize the tennis courts on site for PE class too. So that was great feedback that that this teacher, I think, enjoys tuning in and provided that as food for thought as we think about those things.
Yeah, I'll just say, as we are continuing the conversation, yet again to commend you all and exercise a sense of appreciation because of the blooms that have been in the air, of those pies in the skies that have been discussed for so long. Boards before you, again, I wasn't around, so I can't necessarily speak to, but the fact that you all are addressing these, that we as a board of governors, as a central office leadership team, are addressing these matters, because these are very difficult conversations to have, and we're having them in a public forum, in an exercise of transparency. But there's going to be that many more difficult conversations to also be had in the future, and just to be respectful of the sensitivity of the conversations that we're having for those millions and millions that are watching. We are addressing and referencing particular schoolhouses, school buildings, school communities, but it all is in an effort and attempt to continue to put our corporation's best foot forward with all that we do for the sake of our students and faculty and staff and support them.
So in this moment, what do we need to do to move forward? Right, us as a board right now.
Decide how much.
Mhm.
I think this size of the ceiling, and then by consensus provide us the okay with the that ceiling with that project listing that we've mentioned, so that we can go ahead and advertise based off of this timetable.
I don't think so.
If
I mean, if you
feasible.
looked at that timetable, we would have delivered it to the media on the 19th. So I think we're going to be having to back off February 14th.
So revised.
Revised.
At the end,
Yeah.
not to worry, there's no dates in there for getting money. I mean, it's all to be determined.
Correct.
But
But to move it
it
forward.
needs to be moved forward tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable as Pete is with the 20
I'm too.
and with the list, and I like that it's not on it.
And Brad, you said you're good at 20.
Yeah, just I want to put a note out there to the public, as you hear your building mentioned, all of a sudden your ears go up. It's not, I don't think it's anyone's intention to move the hip tomorrow. Nobody's being displaced. I mean, I don't want to say we're not moving anybody right now. And I think our goal is to not misplace them until something is long term figured out. So please don't.
Thank you.
Don't get worked up, because
And we brought it up to our leadership team too, just so that they understood as we are having these discussions, if they hear people, tune in, and because it is hard, these become long conversations and people tune in at different times, I think, to having them. But to Mr. Walton's point, this is wonderful discussion because it's what we're able to do and provide our students and the opportunities. And we're only looking to expand those opportunities, and it's not it won't be there. It's how can we make it better for what we are able to do. Yeah.
Do we need a motion or?
No, I think they just need a consensus, and I think they're getting that from us right now. We feel comfortable moving forward with it.
That's sufficient. What they just did, consensus.
I'd like to have a motion to move forward with at least a cap on a tentative cap on the borrowing. If you want to say 20, if you want to say 75, and then the projects themselves, I think you've got a listing of those.
All right.
I
Well, I
make
move
Okay.
to move forward with this project with a tentative cap on the borrowing of $20 million.
Second.
And just in talking with John a little bit, and others people can it sounded from my perspective that it sounded like he would be on board with this. Is that what other people have gotten? Again, I don't want to speak on behalf of another board member, but I don't know that it sounded like one of the things that he said, he wanted taxpayers to have something to show for the increased tax rate,
We
which I was
agree.
in agreement with that, and the possible decreased services from other taxing units. And so I was wanting to represent his thoughts on that.
And this also bring up another great point of clarity that I'm asked that Mrs. Scalf, Mrs. Bolzer bring to fruition. Of course, it's not approximate, but of the tax base. Mrs. Bolzer, Mrs. Scalf, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of our tax base will not see a change within their current taxes. Of those that may, it would be very minimal. Am I correct?
All right, we've got a motion to move forward with a cap of $20 million in projects. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Moves forward with 6-0. So, direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is 10.02 board retreat planning. Nicole, do you want to
Yeah.
talk to this? Kind of have this one up?
Sure. So several months ago, we had done the self-evaluation, the Indiana School Board Association board evaluation. So just kind of seeing where we are as a board. We have not gone over those findings yet. So we really need to schedule that and go over that. We were thinking that this could be an abbreviated board retreat discussion topic, maybe like we typically do 10 to 4, 10 to 5. We were thinking this would be maybe closer to like a 10 to 2. And we are due for one if we're looking at quarterly, trying to do that quarterly. So first of all, are people good with that topic matter? Are we like?
Okay. Still just as a follow-up, I know I reached out some time ago when Mr. School Board with the Indiana School Board Association conducted the self-assessment that you all participated in. He is available in February. If you all would like for him to come through, provide that much further explanation as to the results.
And just we're probably looking at having a retreat here. So we need to put any more people out for having it at their home. And that way we're just kind of everybody's familiar with this place. And everybody knows where everything's at. Get some familiarity here.
Just design in some pickleball courts.
We have a date.
Get all
Oh,
kinds
did
of
he say the
February
24th?
24th.
Okay, so if people could just look and see if that would even be a good date. I'm pretty sure I said that works for me. Okay. So again, February 24th, 10 to 2 is what we'd be looking at.
I can make that.
Yeah. Should be good. Here. All right. Anything else on that? All right. Thank you, Ron.
And moving on to 10.03, does anybody have any other discussion for the greater good of the corporation?
I have a few things. Karen, do we have a closing date for McBride yet?
No, Ron said that the legal description just got done today, so I would expect it's within the next week or two.
Okay.
That was the last thing we were waiting on for the final part of the title work. So
Has there been any discussion with administrators from Seton in regards to this process? And because I know
haven't received any calls. I have heard that there is a possibility that they've reached out, but they have not reached out to me.
I've received a couple of calls, and I'm just going to redirect them because the way it was pointed out to me 2 days ago, they've got a very strict timeline in their meeting. They're wanting to know something.
You're welcome to send them to me too. That's fine.
Can do.
Whatever.
Yeah, I did. I got that feedback too, but I think they felt like they were waiting for us to say something. But I'll relay that. Message.
I don't know. We have a facility use form online that they can also fill out.
Okay.
That will be their starting point.
Okay.
So,
I'll share that.
okay.
I had a question. The former athletic office, just wanting to know what the plans are for that. And I only asked because as Tiernan Center's packed and everyone's in there, looking over, it looks bad that it's just being used as storage. Just with the Jamie, you're shaking your head.
It was
fixed up like a
yeah, it was fixed up because it's being used as a
We are protecting the photographs that
Okay.
are on the wall right now.
There are a ton of photographs.
on whether those go up like they were or whether they go up in a
Okay,
different fashion.
so it's a temporary.
It is
thing.
temporary
Okay,
while we
thank
were
you.
painting.
I was
and
just
fixing.
like-
Yeah, it's not permanent. We're
Trying to
just
think
trying
what
to
the,
protect those.
the use was, because it had been fixed up before the painting and the current
Okay.
storage. It was being used as like a
It's kind of a little conference room-ish area, but for
Okay.
alumni.
memorabilia.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, like a trophy room.
So it'll be.
It'll go back to that, I think, after.
Okay.
After, yeah, there's just some figuring out on
Okay.
that.
No, I
So-
hadn't
Good question.
seen there for a while, or seen it for a while, and I was like, oh dear. Like,
Thank you, because I was in there.
It's to protect those.
Yeah, we didn't
I
really
was in
think
there for
that.
about 15 minutes.
and
Saturday.
the Primex looks great, by the way. Those good job on that. So
It's a good job.
did you have other?
I don't have a list, but you could have.
Okay.
Give more.
No, so we went to Fairview and saw awesome things going on at Fairview. Just wanted to give a shout out. I saw Mrs. Angelucci. She's the art teacher over there. She was doing colorful snowflakes when it was like 2 degrees that day, or -2. I don't know. It was so cold, and so the kids were like embrace the snowflakes and doing all that. So that was fun. Miss Balar, she's one of our new teachers at Fairview, and she was doing these puzzle pieces that were spelling out words. I loved all the tactiles and it was. I got hugs from kindergartners, so that was super fun. Enjoyed that. Who'd you get to go see?
Well, I got to see lessons with the OG, the Orton Gillingham. Lessons in second grade. I think
Yes.
I got to see them out, but really powerful teaching in the classrooms that I visited. Just the teachers' direct instruction and the kids engaging and learning about different sounds, and then doing an activity with sand, and just it was really great to see. It was always great to visit with Mrs. Service there as well. Like we talked about NIET a little bit, and we got to eat with her and just some good teaching going on there.
And there was a Patsy Baker signing. I know she was here earlier. Sighting. Yeah, it was like, oh, Patsy. Hey. So no, it was really good to be in that schoolhouse. So
I was just going to add, I know you mentioned the equity and diversity meeting at the library, the public forum. So Brad was there, Kim was there, I was there, and John was there. And it was really great to hear from students who spoke about microaggressions that they faced in the classroom, and parents' perspective, and then teacher perspective as well. So I thought that was very powerful. And then, of course, great to hear Dr. Wright speak about the policies that we have in place, because we want, we care about every student and the experience that they have. So
I somewhat stretched the 3 minute of allotment of time there.
I was like 3 minutes. That was like
I know you all find that hard to believe that I stressed such time, but just to remind our community that equity is at the forefront of all that, and of the commitment that our corporation has made for so and will continue to commit to it. We also, as a superintendent, we've been in lockstep with our Richmond Education Association Racial Equity Coalition in seeing through many of their charges. Now, of course, we're not where we all will eventually be, because it's a living experience, but to know that we have provided implicit bias training to our faculty and staff, as well as community stakeholders that chose to participate, students as well that chose to participate. We had a student success survey to further assess where students are with their experience, their overall holistic experience at RCS. We've done and conducted microaggression training. We had an entire professional development session in which we invited the Indiana State Teachers Association, our REA representatives, the Racial Equity Coalition members from the community to come in and provide training on one of our professional development days after the winter recess last year. So we've met with our current board and their representatives time and again. And so we'll continue to devote all that we have done and continue to for students. And it's just, again, it's great that students are at the forefront of all that we're doing.
I will say this. I'm sorry. Just if any of y'all saw the date, or the dates on our policies that we have in regards to equity, they will see it long predates any of the public discussions that are going on now. You know, many years ago, we saw, you know, the need for diversity and equity, and that's why we had policies that were put in place a long time ago before there were any thoughts, you know, to create community dialogues. We were doing it here in this place already. So,
And then to piggyback on that again, not to stretch too much more time, but of those policies that you referenced that have been on our books for some time and are consistently revisited. We just had a dialogue of policy, sometimes a little bit of such policies. They are and have been vetted by legal entities, and they have those legal entities have provided us with what's known as legalese when it comes to the verbiage and language within those documents. I think that of the protocols that we have in place, we have representatives not only amongst our cabinet but also at the building levels that are at the ready to receive any type of complaints and or claims of inequity. We have protocols and processes that will carry out, and that's one of the things, to Mrs. Brunton's point, that I tried to emphasize at the tail end of the experience, is that if there have been situations of inequity or injustice, if I can still, MLK's terms of the way in the month of January just celebrated, but if there are injustices and inequities that are occurring, we simply need to be informed and know about them. We have processes and protocols to address them and meet them where they are, no matter what they may be.
I just want to say, I know we talked about alumni night too, but just an official, amazing job to the alumni association. I mean, I was hearing things from this Haven Kitchen about they probably answered hundreds, if not thousands, of emails from all around the country, and then to all the cheer double act coaches, band director. I do know that hopefully we can continue this next year. There's lots of people already talking about how do we include more clubs and different sports and really the athletes. And just I can't even imagine the amount of hours that they put in. Even just managing us when we're all on the floor we're just talking because we haven't seen each other in so long.
Some are in the air.
I was in the stands and you guys cheering out there. Oh,
Miss Schultz and her kids.
Oh my gosh.
And I did want to give a shout out to Miss Jackson practice.
Are you still sore?
I wanted to give a shout out to Miss Katie Poger, who she used to be the gymnastics coach. Myself and Erica Radford, formerly Stewart, we were like, we're not stunting. And she was like, I'll go up. And, I don't want to reveal her age, but.
Does our insurance policy cover that?
That's what I was like, this is a good idea.
It's behind us. We had a great time.
She's a nice
What was completely lost with all of the conversation that night, and especially on Sunday and Monday and yesterday, was the fact we had a basketball game that we won. That seemed to be secondary to all the fun and just the pride and everything else that was seen. When you see people, I stood next to a man that I watched when I was 11 years old play basketball, when I went out on the floor. And, there was something he said, I never thought I'd come back here again. He said, this is incredible. All the alumni who I spoke with that night, who hadn't been back here either since graduating and walking across stage in Tiernan Center, or, in the old Civic Hall, their thoughts were, this is incredible. I need to come back more and become more involved. We won a basketball game that night, but I think we won the hearts of people who we had lost for many, many decades, who are going to make this their destination point every year again. So
I like to see some of the people that walked the halls with me when I was at high school that are now wearing blue and white, and their kids are going there. It just to see the look on their faces of like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah, I
It
can't
was
say.
great to see them back, and it's like they kind of maybe forgot.
I got great feedback from a lot of the Centerville parents too. My nephew is on Centerville. Shout out Bryson. He had his first dunk
against Richmond. My brother, his late father, was a Richmond basketball player. So you think about like us playing Centerville, it's like those memories that a lot of us had growing up. It's that rivalry. Yes, we won, but I don't think it was a negative experience. Hopefully,
It wasn't about the
for
game as
anyone.
much as it was about the.
Yeah, and I hope we get to continue. It's hard. My senior year was the last year before class basketball ended. So getting to play the county schools. I know people say it wasn't always fair, but our senior year we lost sectionals for the first time. When we were still playing county schools. Thank you.
She just said thank you. It was your fault.
You need a tissue.
That should go in the notes.
That should definitely go. As a county,
Yes.
it really brought out, something because we don't, we're not in the tournament. We don't get that camaraderie. So
speaking of a county, the chamber dinner was also.
Oh, yes.
Yes. You're welcome.
Chamber dinner.
Yes, the chamber dinner. It was a great opportunity to connect with our county partners, our community partners, and each other. So that was very good. So,
All right.
that's all I have.
Preview of our upcoming, next upcoming meeting is February the 14th is our next time we'll be together for a work session. During that time, we will be presenting our most recent student achievement data and updates surrounding our literacy levels. We also have a few other items on the agenda for the 14th. What I'll say, just to piggyback on what has already been said, I promise I'll be brief, but you are charged me some time ago in assuming this role to create a professional learning organization. I think our meeting this evening, as well as some of the things that we have discussed, some of the things we've consistently been working through, what it is our cabinet, our administrative leaders, our faculty, staff, students, I think where we are right now compared to where we were is a testament to the courage and the fearless leadership that you all have continued to put in motion. And I think last Saturday was just the beginning of what can occur. As we all have said time and again, when we collaboratively, as faculty, staff, students, and stakeholders come together to put students first, put Richmond first, and commit to the cause. Mr. Fowler had mentioned, and so many alum have mentioned that it was just unbelievable to see what had occurred. However, we all dreamt this. We all dreamt this as a board of governors just a few years ago, and to see that we're here and to know that we have the momentum to continue to build upon it, I think it's remarkable. But still not going to be easy. We still have a long road to go, but it was great to understand and know that the spirit of our city. I was with the bowling team earlier this morning, or earlier this evening, as I mentioned, and speaking to them about what it means to represent Richmond. We referenced to our BPA honorees this evening what it means to be from Richmond, and I grow very emotional because so many folks doubt. They doubt what it is that we can do coming out of Richmond, coming out of East Central Indiana. They doubted as to whether or not such an experience and celebration could be pulled off, and we showed them otherwise. And so I'm so excited that we're going to continue to have the opportunity to prove everyone else wrong, show everyone else otherwise. And as I told the bowling team as they go into their semi-state competition, as we expressed to BPA, Ethan, Mr. Heine, gentlemen, and all those listening, that we're red and white. It's us versus everybody, and we're ready to take on all comers. It's a great time to be in Richmond, and the water's warm.
It's a great day to be right now.
Yes, it is.
Bravo.
All right. With that, meeting is adjourned.